All right. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Thursday, March 13th, 2025 meeting of the California Coastal Commission. I'd like to ask Ms. Miller to please call the roll.
Commissioner Bochco.
Here.
Commissioner Calfee.
Here.
Commissioner Dumlau.
Here.
Commissioner Escalante.
Here.
Commissioner Hart. Commissioner Hart.
Excuse me, here.
Commissioner Harmon.
Here.
Commissioner Kelly.
Here.
Commissioner Lowenberg.
Here.
Commissioner Nadoff.
Here.
Commissioner Turnbull Sanders.
Here.
Commissioner Uranga. Commissioner Williams.
Here.
Commissioner Wilson.
Here.
Chair Cummings.
Here.
You have a quorum.
All right. I'd like to turn it over to our staff for the virtual meeting procedures.
All right, thank you. Good morning. This Coastal Commission meeting is occurring both in person and through Zoom. This meeting is also being webcast and can be viewed online at cal-span.org. If you have access to the internet and wish to watch or listen to the meeting only and not speak on an item, we recommend use the CalSpan website. Those who wish to address the Commission today can do so in person, through the Zoom platform, or by phone. The speaker request forms may be found on the Commission's webpage. Paper forms and a scannable QR code for paperless submittal are available on the Commission staff table just outside the meeting room. For those on Zoom, we have posted virtual hearing procedures on the Commission's agenda webpage, which is a guide on providing comments via Zoom or by phone. Members of the public speaking during general public comment may be given up to 2 minutes to speak at the discretion of the chair. Requests to speak during the general public comment period will not be accepted after 9 a.m. on each day of the meeting. In order to provide the opportunity for the broadest range of public participation, you may speak on a specific topic one time only each month. Those speaking on an agenda item that is not general public comment are typically allowed 2 to 3 minutes to speak at the discretion of the chair. And we will accept a request to speak on an item up until the chair opens the hearing on that particular item. If you have access to the internet, please go to the Commission's webpage and click on the link to fill out a speaker request. If you do not have internet access or prefer to testify by phone, please call the Commission staff at 562-477-9089. Again, that number is 562-477-9089. Staff will provide you with a telephone call-in number and instructions for how to participate and provide testimony by phone. We will manage speakers coming in and out of the meeting through a meeting organizer. When it is your time to address the Commission, the organizer will invite you to turn on your video and microphone or provide instructions on how to unmute your phone. Chair Cummings, that concludes the virtual hearing procedures.
Thank you so much. I'd like to ask staff if there's any changes to the agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning to the Commission and to everybody who's joining us today. The list that we posted on Monday with the agenda changes, we'll be adding a couple items to that, so I'll note those as I walk through the list. So item 12A, that's the City of Trinidad's LCP amendment for a single parcel rezone to accommodate housing on an inland property, that is moved to consent. Item 13A, that's the Humboldt County Public Works Department CDP for a flood resiliency and habitat enhancement project. That's been postponed. Item 15A, the City of Newport Beach's LCP amendment to create a new housing opportunity overlay district to provide additional opportunities to build housing in the community. It's a time extension only, and that is moved to consent. And then this morning, I'm adding item 16B. This is the application for a replacement single-family home at 2701 Shell Street in Newport Beach, Corona del Mar community. That is postponed. Item 18A, Carlsbad's LCP amendment on their Village and Barrio Master Plan to add objective design standards. That's moved to consent. Item 18B, City of Carlsbad's LCP amendment for their annual zoning code cleanup. That's a time extension only. That's moved to consent. And then also adding this morning, item 18C, the City of Del Mar's LCP amendment to update their code regarding ADUs. That's moved to consent. Item 18D, City of San Diego's LCP amendment on reducing parking requirements in their transit priority areas. That's postponed. Item 20A, it's a CDP application for Steinberg and Encinitas. That is postponed. Item 20B, that's CDP application for Connor and Setiadi and Solana Beach. That's moved to consent. And item 21A, this is the CDP amendment for the Encinitas SCOUP permit. That is moved to consent. And that completes the agenda changes this morning.
All right, thank you so much. All right, at this moment in time, we're going to open the meeting up to general public comment. This is an opportunity for people to address us on items that are not on the agenda. And I'd like to ask Chris if you can call up the members who are on our list for today.
Okay, first I'm going to go through some general public comment procedures. For members of the public, I'll be announcing the names of the upcoming speakers and invite you to speak when it is your turn. Each speaker will be allowed 2 minutes to speak during general public comment. In order to allow for live video testimony on Zoom, we will be bringing you in as panelists. As we bring you in, your Zoom will reload, and this may take a moment. To speed up this process, we will bring in several people in at a time, but please remain muted and keep your video off until we ask you to speak. After your time is up, you'll be moved back to attendee mode. For members of the public present in the room, I will call your names in the order that they appear in our sign-up lists, and when you hear your name, please line up behind the podium and announce yourself with your name when you approach to speak. Several helpful tips. There is a raise your hand function on Zoom that will help us find you in the attendee list. If you're using a phone for audio, you can raise your hand by dialing *9. If you're participating by Zoom, you should see a button on your Zoom screen. If you have signed up to speak for this item and are able to do so, please raise your hand now. When it is your time to speak, we will invite you to unmute and turn on your camera. You can unmute yourself on a phone by dialing *6. And please remember to state your name for the record. So starting with our speakers in the room, we have Tracy Murphy, followed by Mackenzie Plowen and Nina Audino. And if you've heard your name, please line up behind the podium. And before you go ahead, turn that mic on. There's a button at the bottom.
How's that?
And go ahead.
Good morning, and thank you all for your time and service. My name is Tracy Murphy, a longtime Watsonville resident, here on behalf of my family, community members, and those who couldn't afford to take a day off from work to address you today. I live 11 miles from the Moss Landing Power Station, and I'm obviously deeply concerned about the overall contaminants in our community, yet still to be determined in some areas, not the least of which is in our small vineyard soil, how it affects not only the wine, but the consumer's trust in the safety of the product and trusting all agricultural products in the Pajaro Valley. I'm a strong proponent of green energy and backup storage. My home has solar backup system. I drive an electric car. Harnessing and storing battery power is vital to our future. Yet I urge caution, a moratorium on approving the 3 county proposed sites as new BESS facilities. It is unclear if you even have jurisdiction in these areas, but I hope you will use your authority to help block these proposals for now. It seems there's been an effort to quickly and quietly push these applications through. Right now, we cannot rely on the safety of storing volatile lithium batteries so close to our schools, agricultural land, and hospitals without necessary safety contingencies included. A high school football game is not held without an ambulance on the field, just in case. Yet these facilities have no mandates for 24/7 on-site monitoring or housing the necessary foam or whatever magic they've decided is needed to put out these fires. Isn't MIT releasing newer, safer, non-lithium battery technology within several months? Can't we wait? It behooves us to slow down and use best safety practices to get it right before we open these facilities so we don't face terrible repercussions. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Mackenzie Plowen, Nina Audino, and Gregory Audino.
I'm going to ask if you could please not applaud or boo. We want to give everybody the opportunity to speak and have their opinion be respected. So, go ahead.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Mackenzie Plain. I'm an environmental policy graduate student, and I'm here to voice my strong support for the California Coastal Commission's vital role in protecting our coastline. As a resident, I deeply value public access to our beaches and the preservation of our natural habitats, especially in the face of increasing threats from climate change and political interference. Recent actions by the Trump administration and federal legislators, such as the proposed Coastal Commission Accountability Act, pose a direct threat to the Commission's ability to uphold the California Coastal Act. These efforts to undermine the Commission's authority not only jeopardize our coastal ecosystems, but also disregard the will of Californians who have consistently supported strong coastal protections. I urge the Commission to remain steadfast in its mission to balance development with conservation, ensuring equitable access and safeguarding our coastline from overdevelopment and environmental degradation. The Commission's work is more critical than ever, and I encourage you to continue advocating for policies that protect our coast from both environmental and political threats. Thank you for your dedication to preserving California's coastal legacy for future generations.
All right, thank you. Before we continue, I just got word that someone left their hazard lights on outside. It's a white Aviator, if that's anyone's car. But continuing on, Nina Audino, Gregory Audino, and then Keith McHenry. Go ahead.
Good morning. My name is Nina Audino. I have been a resident of Santa Cruz County for 37 years. My husband and I own a home 11 miles from Moss Landing. Once upon a time, the citizens of this great state passed an initiative under which your regulatory powers were born. The people's will created you because the people recognized the need to protect our coast's delicately balanced ecosystem from egregious, unregulated harm. Your mandate is a complex balancing of needs between development and protecting the coast. The Coastal Act under which you serve recognizes that there will be conflicts between your policies and development proposals and states explicitly that these should be resolved in a manner which, on balance, is the most protective of significant coastal resources. How did we get from there to here? How did we end up in this, in the unregulated, catastrophically destructive mess unfolding on our shores at the site of Vistra's toxic battery energy storage fire and adjacent to the state's second largest estuary? Destructive to public safety, health, and welfare, destructive to public and private property, to coastal economic well-being, destructive to the delicately balanced coastal ecosystem you're mandated to protect. The battery energy storage sector is fast becoming the gold rush of the 21st century, expected to reach nearly $4.5 billion by 2030, growing at a rate of 30% annually between 2024 and 2030. The best sector's stampede has arrived in earnest to the Central Coast. Santa Cruz County is poised to approve zoning for 3 more lithium-based grid-scale battery energy storage facilities staked in a toxic lithium corridor straight through the heart of the county along a 15-mile stretch and sited carefully just beyond your reach. But you, as well as the public you represent, know that wind currents and watersheds and the toxic contaminants they spread do not recognize Coastal Commission boundaries or county boundaries. How many of us have asked quietly amongst ourselves what would have happened on January 16th and 17th had there been a major wind event while the 100-foot toxic lithium battery flames roared? Surely every regulatory body tasked with protecting the environment, including yours, needs to be asking many science-based questions about inherently volatile and highly flammable lithium using best technology.
Thank you.
Pitched by its developers as new and improved, safe
Thank
and
you
clean,
so much.
but clearly not.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so much.
Thank you. Next, Gregory Audino, Keith McHenry, and then Madeline Adamczewski.
Good morning, and thank you all for being here today. In the Coastal Commission's mission statement, basically protecting and enhancing California's coast, which that's why I'm here. I love it. I'm a surfer. I enjoy our ocean sports. In there, I'm going to speak to the part where it talks about rigorous use of science in the mission statement. Science was used to prove and show that the area around Moss Landing is highly polluted by fallout from the Vistra fire. Elkhorn Slough, through natural tidal surges, has washed a lot of these contaminants on its shores into the bay. The proposed Minto Road BESS facility on the edge of the Coastal Commission's border jurisdiction. This BESS facility is located uphill of College Lake. This body of water is a natural water reclamation basin that supplies land, local agricultural. It also flows to the Pajaro River and to the Monterey Bay. The type of battery energy storage proposed is a second-generation LFP, lithium iron phosphate. This type has already proven to fail. It catches fire. When it does, at this proposed facility, it will contaminate the watershed and surrounding area. I am asking you, this California Coastal Commission, to take an active interest in requiring further studies on safe, new, best technology that is already being produced to avoid a catastrophic catastrophe here in Santa Cruz County. I appreciate you folks for hearing this. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Keith McHenry, Madeline Adamczewski, and then Brian Roeder.
Yeah, my name is Keith McHenry, and I live 3 blocks from the ocean. And on the 17th of January, I received an email from the Santa Cruz Sentinel saying all was safe. So I proceeded to go to a meeting downtown, opened the door, and my eyes started burning like somebody had launched tear gas at our house. I've been sick ever since the first lithium battery fire at Moss Landing. Then on the one on the 18th of February, I became very ill, where I wake with my throat burning, my tongue is on fire, my eyes burn. I can't even sit in my house at this point. It is so toxic, but I don't have the resources to leave my house and continue to work in Santa Cruz. I urge you to no longer allow any lithium battery storage facilities on the coast of California ever again. They are not safe. I am an environmentalist. I started organizing for alternative energy in 1976. I'm a 3rd-generation National Park Service ranger. My grandfather was the chief naturalist at Yosemite, and he started the tidal pool walks at Natural Bridges. So every one of my paintings, I have since 1992 to today, which is dozens of paintings, includes solar power and wind power in every single one of my paintings. So I'm not opposed to alternative energy, but I am opposed now that I've been poisoned by the Moss Landing fire, totally against lithium batteries. And I have no idea how to solve this problem. There's nobody that's able to help with these health crises, and this county has not encouraged this is probably the largest health emergency in Santa Cruz County history, and yet we are doing nothing about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Madeline, please.
Yes, Madeline Adamczewski. Hi.
Again, please, folks.
Okay. I have a bachelor's in marine science and a PhD in chemistry. So that's who I am. And why am I here? Partly to protest, but maybe as important, I'm here as an advocate for my family, my friends, my neighbor, my community. My community is very important to me, and our quality of life is very important to me. So I'm here on behalf of their health. I'm also here as an environmental advocate. I'm here to tell you that we need to protect our environment, and this is not the way we're going to do it. So let me give you a little information that you might already know. We had a cataclysmic event happen, sort of like 9/11, except we didn't have leadership like Bush going up and planting a flag into the fallout, into the rubble. We didn't have that leadership. We needed it because as time goes on, you're going to see that not only the damage is going to get worse, but it's going to be even more expensive. So let me just refresh your memory. January 16th of this year, 100,000 batteries are in that plant. Maybe not 100,000 went up, but 100,000 are going up. They got overheated. They got ignited. We had an inferno, and if you take the amount of lithium, cobalt, manganese, nickel, and you figure out how much is in each battery and multiply that by 5 tons, and multiply 5 tons times 2,000 pounds per ton. Do you have any idea how many pounds that is? 10 million. 10, comma, 000, comma, 000. That we are breathing, we are touching, we are drinking. And the cleanup effort, may I have 2 more minutes?
No, I'm sorry. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Brian Roeder, Drew Lewis, and then Margie Hollingsworth.
Thank you to the Commission for hearing the concerns of this community. Very grateful for the time that and the thought you're taking on this issue. I know you heard from a group yesterday, and
Can you please also state your name for the...
Brian Roeder
Thank you.
from Never Again Moss Landing. So look, I support decarbonization, but not when these storage facilities burn. You know, the new tech is also imperfect. It can also catch on fire. It's more stable, but it can, and it probably will. And what's in those batteries will be more toxic. And while it may not be a giant plant like this was, it'll really mess up the neighborhood where they're located. And if it's within your area of jurisdiction, we need your help in making sure there are requirements placed upon these facilities before they open. What kind of requirements? Independent oversight of these facilities. Costs money, companies can pay. Why is there a private fire company currently in charge of this facility's safety? Because our fire department was unable to handle what they were told to expect. There should be real-time airborne monitoring capabilities paid for by these companies. We didn't have that. We're still struggling to figure out what came out of these fires. Look, I know this wasn't your call. We didn't know this was going to happen. I just need to let you know this transcends geographic boundaries. In my role within our organization, I'm hearing from people around the world who are very concerned about what's happened here. They're trying to find their own solutions. You know, I think that the Coastal Commission can set a standard. You can create requirements that can actually affect this and help people in other communities beyond the boundaries of your organization. People are very sick. My wife is sick. We've had to leave our home. Yes, there'll be lawsuits and those will, sort things out, but we need your help now to help this be a better situation. Thank you all.
Thank you. Next is Drew Lewis, Margie Hollingsworth, and then Nina Hurdle.
Good morning. My name's Drew Lewis. I represent the Clean, Safe Energy for California and the Santa Cruz Sustainable Living Center Workshop and Farm. And I just would like to point out that what we're looking at is basically 3 Mile Island incident for the battery industry. And I think that it's really going to be a great opportunity for you to step forward and to provide some leadership in this catastrophe that we're faced with. And I really encourage you to do your best to try to help us find some solutions for this very, very terrible problem that we're faced with. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Margie Hollingsworth, Nina Hurdle, and then Diane Dutton-Jones.
Hi, I'm Margie Hollingsworth, and I live in Prunedale. And I'm just here to stress how traumatic this is for everybody, and to let you guys understand that we all need to stand together and realize that this is just the small part of the topic. This is, you guys are going to add more battery stations into Santa Cruz and into Watsonville. And I think you guys all need to stop and think about this first. After what has happened in Prunedale or in Moss Landing, this is not just the first time. This is 5 different fires in 5 years. You're not understanding what is happening with all the toxics that are coming out of it, what it's falling into the ground, what is going into the oceans. We don't know what is happening to all of the animals, all of the fish, the things like that, what our animals are eating on the ground, our livestock. I don't think anybody here would like that to be happening in their backyards. And so I think you guys really need to stand together and think about this very, very strongly before you ever advance on to having more battery storage plants put into this area. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Nina Hurdle, Diane Dutton-Jones, and then Kathleen Lynch.
Hi, my name's Nita Hertel, and I'm grateful that you're all here, and I really appreciate that you feel like some arm of protection for those of us that feel like we don't have access to people that are going to represent us. They're certainly not going to represent us from the utility perspective. And when the batteries first went in there, I was kind of excited because it was great to get away from the fossil fuel thing of Duke Energy and thought, yeah, you know, something alternative coming. But then when the first fires happened, I'm like, whoa, nobody is prepared for this. And it was lack of maintenance and lack of correct supervision, lack of regulation that were caused the first fires because the batteries overheated. And it's like, well, somebody should have been monitoring that so they didn't overheat. Well, obviously it got even more extreme. And I've spent countless hours in this area in Elkhorn Slough, and I'm a beachcomber for the Moss Landing Marine Lab, counting deposition at the beaches for environmental impacts, and spent countless hours on those beaches. And I was just horrified to think that not only are there humans there that are getting affected, but we don't know what's happening to Elkhorn Slough. We don't know what's happening to all the wildlife there. And many of you have, I'm sure, enjoyed that area. And to think that all of this is going to be impacted by things that are getting way ahead of what our science and technology could do. So I really appreciate and encourage you to do what you can do to protect in advance before it gets even worse, because there's a lot of innocent lives that are going to be affected and environmental degradation that we have no idea what that could be. So thank you, and do the right thing.
Thank you. Next, Diane Dutton-Jones, Kathleen Lynch, and then we're moving on to our Zoom speakers. And I'll note that we have 16 speakers on Zoom.
So good morning. My name is Diane Dutton-Jones. I live 2 miles from the planned Minto Road battery site storage site, and for over 40 years. So I want to first thank all the committee members that are actively looking at us and listening to us during our presentations. That really helps. So I'm here representing a lot of people who couldn't be here today, and what I'm feeling and hearing from is that we all recognize the danger of these lithium battery storage technology that's being planned and to be embedded in our neighborhoods, near hospitals, high schools, farmlands that are world class. The Moss Landing disaster is our wake-up call. Thank God it did not happen right on our doorstep, but it has given us so much information and things to think about and be aware of before we just roll out this technology. We do not want this to be our fate. Our beautiful county is, you know, from the mountains to the ocean, is loved by people, not just here, but around the world. People come here for it all. The Moss Landing toxic fallout has awakened us, and to the fact that we are all downwinders. We know the wind does not stop at borders or go anywhere that it shouldn't. So we are all, you know, subject to this danger. Right now, we are currently asking for the Board of Supervisors for an emergency ordinance and a moratorium on the planned battery energy storage sites in our county. And we just appreciate you hearing our concerns today because it's been hard to get through to our Board of Supervisors. We haven't had a lot of dialogue with them and we feel left out. So I appreciate y'all being here and listening to our stories today and our concerns. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Kathleen Lynch, and then our first three Zoom speakers are Adam Leverins, John Stahl, and Ann Stenton.
Hi, my name is Kathleen Lynch. I'm a licensed clinical social worker. I own a home where I live in Seacliff Beach in Aptos. My home is within the jurisdiction of the Coastal Commission. Since the Moss Landing fire in January, I have been afflicted with a horrific rash and sores on my face and neck with a bloating on my face. I'm actually embarrassed to be seen in public today, but I wanted to come here. This rash and sores that do not heal have continued now for 2 months since January 16, with the constant flaking of my skin. If you come close, you'll be able to see it, but I'm being constantly poisoned by the gases that continue to be emitted to this day from the Moss Landing fire, which is not out yet. And the gases seep in under the windows and doors of our home and through the skylights. And so I'm asking the Coastal Commission to please never allow another lithium battery plant on the coast or anywhere near the coast. There are new, safer battery storage systems coming online this year that we have researched. A company that worked with MIT has non-toxic battery storage facilities available later this year, and there's probably some already available. So we have no need to have toxic lithium plants anywhere in California. So I'm also involved, of course, in the local effort to stop the 3 proposed lithium battery plants for Santa Cruz County. So I'm just asking the Coastal Commission to use your powers. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And again, reminder that we have 16 speakers signed up on Zoom. And for those on Zoom, don't turn your camera on until we ask you to speak. So first is Adam Leverins, followed by John K. Stahl, and then Ann Stenton. Adam Leverins, we have your presentation, and it is up. Please go ahead.
Okay, is my audio coming through?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you. First off, I wanted to say there are a lot of people whose voices you haven't heard that are incredibly grateful that on February 5th, you prevented the city of Newport Beach from endangering and decreasing their access to the coast. So thank you for that. Also related to access, if you recall from your December meetings in Newport, some of us talked about Newport Beach's largest public dock circled here in yellow. That shows the typical use level at it, which is nothing, because there's no public parking, no bike rack, no fishing, no restrooms nearby, and a 3-hour time limit. At December, some commissioners inquired to Carl Schwing, who indicated he'd look into this, and we're very grateful for that as well. Could you move to my next slide, please? So Coastal sent an enforcement letter to the city of Newport Beach, and at the harbor master's update last night, talking about the previous month, he references that letter and indicates that the original CDP approved in 2017 indicated that there would be no fishing, no parking, 3-hour time limits. Coastal advised that they should reach out. There's no parking because it's private property of the Irvine Company. Coastal suggested that they reach out to the Irvine Company to see if there could be parking because there's a disabled person lift to get people onto boats at this facility. And the harbor master said last night, in spite of that suggestion, to date, they've declined to do so. He seemed to me to be gloating to have gotten Coastal to approve this original CDP. Next slide, please. This is the CDP that was approved in 2017. It shows a 14,000 square foot restaurant. The dock is for the restaurant. It's not for the public. We're kind of bamboozled And you'll hear more about this in the future. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next is John Stahl, followed by Ann Stenton, and then Ronald Askeland. John Stahl. John, I see that you're in as a panelist. You should be able to unmute yourself. There you go. I see that you're unmuted now. Okay.
I wanted to call in and thank the Coastal Commission for your recent letter 227 from Mr. Wesley Horn to stand pointing out that double tracking the bluff in Del Mar has serious issues on multiple fronts. The Surfrider Foundation also sent a letter dated 227 that pointed out that double tracking the bluff was in conflict with previous federal consistency approvals. Believe it or not, on 228 at the regular board meeting, Sandag moved ahead with item 9 and voted overwhelmingly to study the double tracking of the bluff as one of their 5 options. AB 180 passed in 2021, provided $300 million to Sandag to study how to get the trains off the bluff. An EIR dated 2007 soundly rejected double tracking the bluff. Their original Route C that they now call Camino Del Mar would put a double track trestle through the Los Penasquitos Lagoon. That does not seem like a good idea to me, and I wish you would tell them to think again on that one as well. They're going to update their NOP in the near future, and the citizens of Del Mar have presented a conceptual plan called the Northern Yellow Line that would avoid eminent domain and costly tunnels. Please ask them to include that option in our updated NOP for study. The citizens of Del Mar do not want to run a rail line through the fairgrounds. We do not want to cause undue pain for the city of Solana Beach. We're just trying to save our town from eminent domain of up to 50 homes and protect the character of our city. Without including it, the new NOP would best be titled 5 Best Ways to Destroy Del Mar. Please keep advised on the activities surrounding this rail realignment and keep Sandag and North County in adherence with your core principles, common sense, and CEQA law. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next is Ann Stenton, followed by Ronald Askeland, and then Nathan Brenner. Ann Stenton.
Good morning. Good morning, Chair Cummings, commissioners, and coastal staff. My name is Ann Stenton. I'm with the Newport Mooring Association. Last month, this commission listened to the working class mooring holders in Newport who spoke out against a plan to move public moorings dangerously close together in Newport. While we have some more work to do to ensure and protect public access in the tidelands of Newport Harbor, I just wanted to take a minute today on behalf of my family and the greater mooring community who couldn't speak today to express my sincere appreciation for your dedication to upholding the Coastal Act and to protecting our coastal resources. Your commitment to engaging with stakeholders and ensuring environmental justice is evident, and we're very appreciative. It's clear that you care about doing the right thing, and I just can't imagine where we'd be without your leadership and dedication to preserving our coast and our access to it. So thank you. We appreciate the work you do.
All right, thank you. Next is Ronald Askeland, followed by Nathan Brenner, and then Robin Davidoff.
Good morning. I'm Dr. Ronald Askeland. I have a PhD in chemistry, and I'm the conservation chair of the San Diego Sierra Club. I really want to thank the commissioners for your service. It's greatly appreciated. The Sierra Club Seal Society's mission is to educate the public about the seals and sea lions of La Jolla and contribute over 4,000 volunteer hours annually. We collect community science-based counts for all haul-out areas to provide input for research. We advocate for improved protection and safe viewing areas. The Point La Jolla closure area is working very well. La Jolla Cove adjacent to the closed area is not managed. Over-tourism is causing safety issues and the deaths of newborn pups. We advocate for keeping the cove open through a city management plan. The City of San Diego has been working on a modification of the CDP since last summer. The application has not been filed yet, and pupping season starts this May. There's no transparency in the process to modify the CDP. Well, can you go to the next slide? Our concern is that the CDP won't be sufficient to manage tourism and reduce harassment. Okay, now I will hand it off to Nathan. Thank you.
Next is Nathan Brenner, Robin Davidoff, and then Marcy Snyder.
Hi, Nathan Brenner with the Sierra Club Seal Society. This follows up on Dr. Askland's presentation. First slide, please. I believe that this is Miss Davidoff's presentation, so if she could go first, that would be great.
We can actually bring up your presentation. Give us a second.
Can we just restart the clock for him with please?
This is the presentation that we received under your name?
Yes. That slide is fine, thank you. Last year during sea lion pupping season, which begins in May, some of the pregnant sea lions chose to give birth at La Jolla Cove. The city claims the cove is not under the purview of an existing CDP at Point La Jolla, so refuses to staff rangers in the area. Last year, the city's lack of rangers or lifeguards for crowd control likely contributed to the deaths of 7 of 9 pups born at the cove. Based on these deaths and reports of daily harassment, the city met with the CCC in September 2024, where it was suggested the city rangers patrol the La Jolla Cove area as a modification to the existing CDP. It has been 6 months since that meeting, and a proposed draft of the modification has not been forthcoming. Next slide, please. The Sierra Club supports City Council President Joe LaCava's stated desire to put city rangers on the Cove Beach to manage the area and to keep the area open for ocean access. We believe a successful management of the Cove would include rangers patrolling the Cove Beach to manage crowds, visual barriers such as cones and rope barriers to keep the crowds and sea lions apart. The La Jolla Cove has 2 stairwells for beach access, and these can be each closed by a swinging gate when sea lion pups and their moms are present. The lifeguards could use a PA system to play recorded messages warning the crowds to keep a safe distance and give the sea lions room. Next slide, please. We are requesting the CCC urge the City of San Diego to make a draft of the proposed modification to the CDP public prior to submitting it as a final decision. Sierra Club Seal Society desires to be part of the CDP modification process by providing input to the city with ideas of what does and what does not work, and to make suggestions for tools to assist the rangers and lifeguards. We urge the CCC to require the city to implement any approved modifications by May.
Thank you. Next is Robin Davidoff, followed by Marcy Snyder, and then Carol Carriage. Robin Davidoff. Give us a second while we bring your presentation up.
Okay, hello, I'm Robin Davidoff. I'm the Sierra Club Seal Society Chair. My presentation was actually supposed to be prior to Nathan's, but I'm going to go ahead and show you anyway what we're talking about. So the CDP at Point La Jolla Sea Lion Rookery is working quite well with rangers staffed daily as required by the CDP. But as you can see in the photo below, the La Jolla Cove is just around the corner, and this is the area that we're talking about. La Jolla Cove was just voted the 4th best beach in the United States. Due to its beauty and the sea lions. This attracts millions of tourists from around the world who ignore the signs to not take selfies with the sea lions, approach them, or change their behavior. Next slide, please. So what happens at the Cove? This is a typical day at the Cove. You can see in the top left, there's a gentleman petting a newborn pup. People crowd the left-hand stairs in order to take selfies of the sea lions and block beach access, and people even throw rocks and sand to try to get a reaction from the sea lions to take their photos or pose like this woman next to a 600 to 800 pound animal. Next slide, please. So this is what Nathan and Ron had talked about last summer. We had 9 babies born in the La Jolla Cove area. Not an optimal place for them to be born, we agree. However, this is nature, this is what happens. And on the left, we have a dead pup and people just playing around. In the middle, there's one that was purposely defaced with a lobster head put on top of the dead pup. And on the right, another dead pup as well. Next slide, please. So this uncontrolled tourism, they're literally loving the pups to death. In the right-hand side, we see little girls trying to protect a little pup from being stepped on. This beach is quite small. At any typical time, there's over 200 people on the beach. It's pretty like 100 yards long. It's just too crowded. There's no visual guidelines to protect the pups. There's no ranger interventions. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Marcy Snyder, followed by Carol Carriage, and then Diana Sandoval. Marcy Snyder.
Good morning, commissioners, staff, and the public. My name is Marcy Snyder. I live in Fort Bragg. I'm here to talk about the mill site here in Fort Bragg, which encompasses 1/4 to 1/3 of the land mass area of the town of Fort Bragg, our small city. You joined the city a few years ago in a lawsuit requesting, trying to get the Mendocino Railroad to get a coastal development permit for the work they were doing. They didn't do it. The city has tried to get permits, which is what the lawsuit initially was about, to get Mendocino Railroad to obey the law and get permits. Mendocino Railroad is strictly an excursion train. It doesn't go anywhere. It's not interstate. It doesn't travel. It doesn't have any connections in California. It's strictly inside of Mendocino County with a couple of very short runs. I want to encourage you to move forward with a lawsuit, object to a continuance of the stay, and pursue discovery so we have facts that we can actually base decisions on, facts that are currently unavailable to you. I want to encourage you to continue your good work to enforce the Coastal Act and protect the citizens and the environment in the coastal areas of California. And I also want to say very briefly, I am so sorry about what's happened in Moss Landing. It's very sad. And I think people, when they get these electric vehicles, are trying to do the right thing for the environment in the long run. So my heart goes out to you all. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Carol Carriage, Diana Sandoval, and then Alice McNally. Carol Carriage, we're having trouble promoting you as a panelist, so you should be able to unmute now as an attendee. Carol Carriage, you should be able to unmute now.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, great. Hi, I'm Carol Carriage from Del Mar. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. I'm concerned about the low sand rail project value analysis in which Sandag recommends one of the train relocation options to include reinforcing the existing Del Mar Bluff tracks and to create a double track. I'm grateful, along with many Del Mar residents, for your letter of February 27th to Sandag, stating that you do not consider that option to be viable. And I urge you to hold strong to your previous opinion of June 2022. Not only are our bluffs continuing to erode, but our hillside is showing signs of erosion and more flooding when it rains now, and I believe is at risk of continued erosion and damage during predicted climate-driven storms. Thank you again for considering the double tracking option on the Del Mar Bluff to be not viable. Thanks.
Thank you. Next is Diana Sandoval, Alice McNally, and then Crystal Cancino. Diana Sandoval.
Can I please have my presentation? Oh, awesome. Thank you so much. So my name is Diana Sandoval, and this is my third time I've come before you to raise concerns about your local partner, Santa Barbara County, violating the Coastal Act and allowing an ultra-wealthy property owner at 3215 Foothill Road, Carpinteria, to block a public equestrian and hiking trail. This public trail, which should be accessible to the public, has gone unrecorded and blocked for years. Despite this clear violation, Santa Barbara County has known about this for at least 10 months. Steve Hudson and his team have known about it for 9 months. I notified the enforcement team publicly at the November commission meeting, but the issue remains. The public trail is unrecorded and blocked, as we see in this photo. The fact is, a 15-foot wide public equestrian hiking trail easement was required to be recorded prior to land use clearance, yet this condition was never met, violating the Coastal Act and conditions set forth in several CDPs. Slide, please. Since the trail has gone unrecorded, the commission has the opportunity to require the county to open a southern entrance via Saratoga Drive as an excuse. Via Cerritos Drive, which we can see here is a public street. This would allow immediate access to the public once recorded. The county is using a 1-foot buffer, which the same property owner owns at Cerritos Drive, as an excuse to deny the southern entrance. However, since the property owner also owns the strip, the doctrine of merger could apply, allowing a public-to-public connection and immediate opening to the public trail. Therefore, I urge the public to please go to polotrail.com, again, polotrail.com, and sign the petition. I urge the commission's enforcement team to ensure the public trail is immediately recorded and open to the public via Saratoga Drive. A public-to-public connection is available now. If the commission does not act now, I fear the public will never enjoy this trail, as the county tends to exempt this property from the Coastal Act and permit conditions. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Alice McNally, Crystal from Queer Surf, and then Peter Kaz. Alice McNally.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Good. On 2.5, I asked the commission about the fact that San Onofre and Diablo Canyon licenses were both approved using historic climate data from the NCR and not climate projection data, which is available to them. The NRC is wrongfully allowed to use only historic climate data in their applications, and you've approved them all. Without incorporating the best, most up-to-date data available information into this process, it is unclear whether the safety margins for nuclear power plants established during the licensing period, in most cases over 40 years ago, are adequate to address the risks that climate change poses to the most toxic material known to man. Does this concern you? The commission has not even commented on this. On 2/12, I wrote to each one of you and I asked for a written response. I've received none. Will the commission now require that the climate projection data be included in existing and future licensing? Please comment on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Crystal from Queer Surf, Peter Kaz, and then Andy Oliver. Crystal.
Hi, thank you. My name is Crystal, and I'm a resident of San Mateo County. I wrote something that I kind of just wanted to say in favor of making our beaches and the ocean more accessible for people living with disabilities. I have a picture up here of my dad, who for a long time was unable to make it to the sand, to the beach, to the ocean. And so I'll just read this. I never felt I belonged by the sea, short and stout, not meant to be free. The sand unsteady, the waves too wide, the silent fear I learned to hide. My father rolled but could not stand, the shore too distant, too far from land. So we watched the ocean through a screen, lived our dreams in the in-between. With octopus arms we danced below, sang with whales where currents flow. From our dry home we longed to dive, yet in real life we did not thrive. Then he was gone. The world stood still. The tide rolled in against my will. Alone I wandered to the shore, the place we dreamt of once before. The waves still roared, the gulls still cried, the ocean moved, yet I just sighed. I traced the edges of the deep, but stood apart, afraid to leap. Then one day, lost and worn, burdened, anxious, spirit torn, I met a soul who shined so bright, a queer surfer bathed in ocean light. They spoke of waves, of healing deep, of salty air and peaceful sleep, a place where outcasts, like myself, find their space, where tides embrace with endless grace. Queer surf called and I was seen, not judged for who I'd never been. Together we redefined the shore, a space for all, not less, but more. Now I swim with rays and eels, feel the ocean soft and real. Humpbacks hum beneath my chest, a love reborn, my soul at rest. I'll cut it real short. What once was flat upon a screen now moves within a live serene, no longer watching from the land, but breathing deep within heart and hand. Mother Ocean vast and wide, now my home where he abides.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Next is Peter Kaz, Andy Oliver, and then Patricia McPherson. Peter.
Good morning, Commissioners. I just want to say how thankful and grateful as a mooring community in Newport Beach we are on your latest decision for the safe access for the ordinary and middle class people. Thank you so much and have a good one. Thank you.
Thank you. And next is Andy Oliver, Patricia McPherson, and then I'll call names that we aren't able to find. Andy Oliver.
Hi, I'm Andy Oliver, a Long Beach resident and president of the Long Beach Safe Neighborhood Coalition. I'm joining to talk about the issue of short-term rentals. In light of comments made at the last Coastal Commission meeting from a number of STR operators, I want to remind this board of a few things regarding the issue. First of all, on the subject of coastal access, you must be aware that nightly pricing in most STRs on the coast far exceeds the going rates at hotels. The regulations you put forth are supposed to balance tourism and local residents' needs. However, it seems like local resident needs always seem to come last. More and more communities are waking up to this. Furthermore, by inviting in absentee real estate investors running multiple listings throughout an area, you have opened up a Pandora's box full of problems that threaten local residents. In February, a 16-year-old was killed and 5 others injured in a shooting at a Woodland Hills short-term rental where a party with over 200 attendees was occurring. Although that incident was not on the coast, what makes you think that something like that would not happen in a coastal jurisdiction? Last year at this time, a similar large house party disrupted a community in Belmont Shore. And last week, again, Long Beach police had to be called to arrest more unruly Airbnb renters in the same city. I bring these things up to remind this body that the dangers of unhosted short-term rentals are not going away, and to encourage the home sharing model, which would discourage the corporatization of rental housing and bring back much needed inventory to the housing market. Thank you.
Thank you. Patricia McPherson, and then Janet Rogers, and then a couple names that we aren't able to see. So Patricia McPherson.
Can you hear me?
Hi, yes, we can hear you. Oh, you muted again. Oh, sorry. One more time.
Okay, I think I'm unmuted, right?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you very much. Patricia McPherson, Grassroots Coalition. Good morning, commissioners. It's been a while. I'd like to remind you today of CDP 5-91463. I'm sure Ms. Bochco recalls me saying that number over and over and over again. This has to do with Playa Vista and Ballona wetlands, which involves the entire freshwater marsh system. Today, we're requesting assistance from the energy team and Kate Hucklebridge in garnering information that directly involves health and safety threats to Ballona wetlands and Playa Vista residents. There's currently a lawsuit that's been filed for failed gas mitigation systems that are out there. You'll be learning about that. The Freshwater Marshes oil well, University City Syndicate, continues to have open pipeline volumes of oil field outgassing directly over top that is unchecked. And I remind you of the 2010 shutdown by CalGEM of the SoCal gas operations for a year due to reservoir gas leakage to the surface. Reservoir gas leakage to the surface and waters creates an ultra-hazardous level of threat to the environment and the public. The second issue is the Department of Water Resources, as of 2024, is acknowledged Ballona as a groundwater-dependent ecosystem under the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act, and as such has required specific hydrological evaluations to protect Ballona's abundant freshwater resources. Enforcement staff have repeatedly cited that the Coastal Commission can engage to protect Ballona's fresh surface and groundwater for Ballona's ecosystems, which you did when you helped with the lawsuit the Grassroots had with the unpermitted drains where Playa Vista and CDFW were draining away Ballona's fresh waters. Now we wish your assistance in addressing the drainage openings along the Ballona Channel and into the marina that continue to waste and throw away Ballona's fresh water, ponding rainwater and Ballona's groundwater that is thrown out to the channel and from the fresh.
Thank you. Next is Janet Rogers. Janet, I see that your camera is trying to turn on, and then I'm also asking you to unmute. You should be able to unmute. Janet? I think you might be frozen. I'll bump you back into attendee mode and then see if you can unmute as an attendee. And then our other two remaining speakers that we aren't able to see, Susie Whitelaw and Cindy Abbott. Susie Whitelaw or Cindy Abbott, if you're in the meeting, please raise your hand. And then Janet Rogers, if you're able to unmute. All right, sorry, I don't think we can get to Janet today. And then I'm seeing no other hands raised. Chair Cummings.
All right, thank you very much, and thank you for everyone who participated in public comment. I just want to turn to staff for any comments on anything that was raised during public comment.
I suppose one thing just to mention, we spoke about this yesterday in regards to Moss Landing. We did have a whole bunch of public comment on that today. Most of the folks have left, but maybe for those that still may be online, I just refer you to comments we made yesterday in brief. Just want to reiterate that the commission here, the Monterey County is actually issued the CDP for the Moss Landing facility. The Coastal Commission did not have a role in permitting the facility, and we haven't played a direct role in cleanup at this point. We are looking into whether there is any violation of the Coastal Act, and we'll continue to do that and coordinate with Monterey County on that issue. And then as I did yesterday, just wanted to mention in the future, AB 205 provides a pathway for the commission to have a direct role in these types of facilities if that's the permitting pathway chosen by the applicants. And just to reassure the public, we're paying very close attention to everything that's happened here, and we'll be trying to learn the lessons, and if we are reviewing projects in the future, so that we avoid this kind of disaster in the future.
Thank you so much. Any questions or comments from board members? Commissioner Hart.
Thanks so much, Chair. I was just curious if you could respond to the sea lion issue at La Jolla Cove, and why would it be that the rangers would just stop rather than protect the entire area?
Thank you. So the commission may remember a couple of years ago approving the CDP for management of Point La Jolla. The CDP required a long-term management plan as part of that, as part of the condition compliance on that. And the city did prepare that, and it's in place right now. Our understanding is that the city wants to amend the plan in order to expand the duties to cover the La Jolla Cove area. And staff certainly doesn't have any concern with that. I mean, as you're alluding, we think they could do that now, but the city wanted to formally address it in their long-term management plan. So we are awaiting that proposal. Actually, just this morning, we had contact from the city requesting a meeting on the topic. So we'll be meeting with them soon and hope to have this resolved as quickly as possible.
Thanks so much, Mr. Frank. Through Chair, I just think that it sounds like it's pretty critically important before the pupping season, which is what, May? Is that? Yeah. Okay. So we'll be getting a follow-up, I imagine, at our next meeting as to whether or not that area is protected. Would that be possible? Yeah, we can provide an update. As Carl said, we're meeting with the city shortly, so we'll provide an update on that meeting and what the status is at that time. Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Kelly.
Can I ask a follow-up question about the equestrian trail in Carpinteria that was raised, and if we are involved in any conversations with them about Foothill Road?
Yes, thank you, Commissioner. We have been engaged with the commenter on several issues. The issue she raised today is a new one for us. We just heard about it today, so we will be looking into it further and can provide future updates.
Thank you.
Commissioner Novel.
I was, excuse me, I was wondering if you could provide us any updates on what's going on at San Onofre, the public comment on that.
There's not much to report on at San Onofre, but at Diablo Canyon, we do continue to work with PG&E on relicensing. That's expected to come before you later this year. So I don't have much specifically to report. We're in the midst of discussions with them as we speak on the CD, the consistency determination and permit. So we will, yeah, I don't have any specifics to update, but just know that that's going to be before you later this year.
Thanks.
Any other questions or comments from commissioners? Okay, seeing none, I just wanted to clarify some of the comments that were brought up regarding the battery energy storage facilities in Santa Cruz County. The co-location of these sites has been the way that the county has and the energy folks have tried to align these is putting them next to energy transfer stations. So when people were saying that there's like 3 or 4 proposals, there are 4 energy transfer station sites in Santa Cruz County. There's 1 proposal moving forward. And I just want to clarify that it's not in the coastal zone. So it will not be coming to this board. It's a county issue. But just wanted to make sure that was clear, just given the comments that were made today. But that being said, I think that, again, we really need to continue to understand the impacts of the Moss Landing fire, which was very devastating for many people in our community. And we need to continue to figure out how we can have these storage sites be much safer and better regulated. And with that, we'll move on to our next item, which is our administrative calendar. Item 5, well, item 5A, yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So yes, item 5 is the administrative calendar for all districts and units on the agenda today. There's just 1 project from Newport Beach. Conditions are acceptable to the applicants, no known public interest. So we're looking for whether 4 or more commissioners object to issuance of that administrative permit.
All right, we'll see. Are there any members of the public who've signed up to speak to us on this item?
No.
Okay, bring it back to the commission. Are there 4 or more commissioners who'd like to object to the staff recommendation? Seeing none, the commission concurs. Moving on, item number 6, consent calendar. I'll turn it back to staff.
Thank you. And again, this is the consent calendar for all units and districts on the agenda today. There's 4 items from Orange County and 1 from San Diego County. While there's no controversy on most of these items, we did receive correspondence on item 6A seeking denial of the proposed project, which would replace a dock located on the south side of Balboa Island in Newport Bay at 546 South Bayfront. The opponent expresses concerns with the new dock that would extend 16 feet further than the existing dock currently does. Comments suggest this extension would impact navigability within a nearby boat mooring field and generally interfere with public access and recreation within the bay. Several other issues were addressed, all of which has been responded to in a staff report addendum. But with regard to the extended dock, staff notes the proposal is fully consistent with the city's harbor policies as to where in the bay docks may be extended beyond the pierhead line. And the commission has generally followed those allowances. And there are several docks nearby that similarly extend beyond the pierhead line. So staff hasn't identified any adverse impacts to coastal access and recreation as a result of those allowances. We'd also note that even though the proposed dock is longer, it will have less total overwater coverage and less fill from pilings, both of which are beneficial in terms of preservation of soft bay bottom habitat and for eelgrass growth in the area of the bay. So staff hasn't identified any changes to our recommendation, and we continue to recommend approval of that matter and the others identified on the consent calendar.
Thank you so much. Are there any members of the public signed up to speak to items on the consent calendar?
Yes, for item 6A, we have one person on Zoom, Adam Leverins. Adam, you're being promoted in as a panelist right now. And I'll also note for item 6B, we have 2 people available for questions, and 6E, we have John Erskine in person available for questions.
Okay, am I up again?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. First, I'm going to reference some language from CDP 5-12-239. It was the same dock constructor, and that's from back in 2013. But it says section 30220 of the Coastal Act requires that areas suited for water-oriented recreation activities shall be protected for such uses. It also talks about how in that instance it reduced public access instead of maximizing it. It also speaks of section 30211 of the Coastal Act, stating in part that development shall not interfere with the public's right of access to the sea. The image I have up on the screen, this is a very congested area. The Balboa Ferry operates 18 hours a day, 365 days a year, about 1,000 feet to the west. There are multiple shore-based rental businesses, big charter boats that go through. The fun zone and the pavilion are magnets for activity. The image on the right shows 3 human-powered watercraft at the next dock over from the proposed site. If you could go to my next slide, please. This dock, I appreciate what Mr. Schwing said about the fill area, but it's going to go out, 12 to 16 feet further into the bay. And the reasoning is that the water is too shallow. And while this reduced square footage of coverage, it's like 13 square foot less, because it's longer, in all likelihood, there will be bigger, longer boats there. So in actuality, the square footage is kind of, was that my 2 minutes already? The square footage is negligible when you consider what will be there. Then if you could go to the final slide, that's the CDP I was referencing, and it talks about the risks and danger that such an expansion would propose. Thank you.
Thank you. And then I'll also just note that we have someone available for questions on 6A as well.
Great,
No
thank you
other speakers.
Thank you so much. Are there any commissioner questions or comments? Seeing none, I'd like to see if a commissioner would entertain a motion on the consent calendar item.
I'll move consent.
We got a motion from Commissioner Harmon. Second by? Second. Okay. So we have a motion by Commissioner Harmon, second by Commissioner Lowenberg. Ms. Miller, if you could please call the roll.
Commissioner Bochco.
Yes.
Bochco, yes. Commissioner Escalante.
Yes.
Escalante, yes. Commissioner Hart.
Yes.
Hart, yes. Commissioner Harmon.
Yes.
Harmon, yes. Commissioner Kelly.
Yes.
Kelly, yes. Commissioner Lowenberg.
Yes.
Lowenberg, yes. Commissioner Notoff.
Aye.
Notoff, yes. Commissioner Turnbull Sanders.
Yes. Yes.
Turnbull Sanders, yes. Commissioner Uranga.
Aye.
Uranga, yes. Commissioner Wilson.
Yes. Yes.
Wilson, yes. Chair Cummings.
Aye.
Cummings, yes. The vote is unanimous.
Thank you so much. Which moves us to item number 7, which are its consent calendar items removed from regular agenda, and I'll turn it back to staff for a presentation on this item.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll walk through those again that were mentioned earlier this morning. So item 12A, this is the City of Trinidad's amendment for a single parcel rezone to facilitate conversion of an existing structure to a housing unit and recognize an existing unit as an ADU. Item 15A, Newport Beach's LCP amendment on their housing opportunity overlay district. That's a time extension only. Item 18A, Carlsbad's LCP amendment for the objective design standards for their village and Barrio master plan area. Item 18B, City of Carlsbad's amendment For their zoning cleanup, that's a time extension only. Item 18C, the City of Del Mar's LCP amendment on their ADUs. And that one was added this morning. Item 20B, the Connor and Setiadi application for a residence in Solana Beach. And item 21A, which is City of Encinitas' SCOUP permit. We're extending the time period for that to be in effect. So there is correspondence on item 21A, which is from Surfrider Foundation in support of the staff recommendation. There's also correspondence and an addenda on item 18C, Del Mar's LCP amendment to update their ADU provisions. The letter we received from Mr. Christopher Peterson identified an issue that needed to be addressed based on a recent court decision known as Riddick that pertains to when an ADU can be deemed exempt from CDP requirements, as well as changes needed to assure the new ordinance conforms to recent changes in state law that pertain to whether and where parking can be required for new ADUs and junior ADUs. So the staff report addendum addresses all of these issues with changes to the recommended suggested modifications or clarifications in the proposed findings. So City has reviewed those changes. They are in agreement. We aren't aware of any continued objections to the amendment, so we are recommending this matter and the others mentioned before get moved to consent and approved per the staff recommendations.
Great, thank you so much. Are there any members of the public signed up to speak on any of the items that have been removed from the regular agenda to consent calendar?
Yes, we have one speaker, and that is for item 18C, and that's Christopher Peterson. Christopher Peterson, you're being promoted in as a panelist right now. Again, this is for item 18C.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Christopher Peterson. I'm speaking today regarding item 18C, the Del Mar LCP amendment regarding ADUs. I thank staff for making a couple of the changes to the suggested modifications that I requested in my comment letter. I continue to be concerned, however, that suggested modifications 13 and 14 impose parking requirements in violation of the ADU statute and without a coastal act basis. The ADU statute expressly prohibits requiring replacement parking when construction of an ADU results in the loss of parking spaces. It also prohibits requiring parking spaces for ADUs located within 1/2 mile of transit. The ADU statute arguably allows parking to be required in these circumstances when necessary for coastal act compliance. The only coastal act basis for requiring parking is when it implicates public access. The LCP provisions addressed in suggested modifications 13 and 14 purport to require replacement parking and parking within 1/2 mile of transit, even in areas of the city where parking doesn't raise public access concerns. That violates the ADU statute without any coastal act justification. I urge the Commission to revise suggested modifications 13 and 14 to clarify that replacement parking and parking for ADUs within 1/2 mile of transit can be required only in areas where on-street parking significantly affects public access. Thank you.
Thank you. And then I'll just note that for a lot of the other items, there's people available for questions as well.
Thank you so much. Are there any follow-up comments from staff based on public comment? Nope. Okay, seeing none, bring it back to the commission. Commissioner Hart, then Commissioner Bochco, Commissioner Kelly.
I think we have the same point. Can staff respond to the points made by Mr. Peterson, because those seem to be logical objections?
So the standard of review for the commission was the certified LUP, and the city believes that there are coastal resource bases for requiring replacement parking, is my understanding. I can also turn it over to Senior Counsel Mayor, who's online.
Yeah, that'd be great, because I know that's a big issue that keeps coming up, the parking requirements.
Yeah, so AB 2097 prevents this parking and specifically calls out.
Hang on one sec. Is there any way we can get her volume up? Okay.
Shall I try leaning in? So,
Yeah, there you go. Thank you.
So AB 2097 does apply to the Coastal Commission, and we could not require parking within a half mile of a major transit stop. It's kind of a convoluted definition, but that's what it boils down to, the same major transit stop that's defined in CEQA. The city has told us that there is no major transit stop in the city of Del Mar. So it wouldn't apply even if we put it in. So staff determined that it wouldn't be there wouldn't be a point to it, and we also worked hard to get those other changes in there.
Can I just have a follow? I mean, I don't want to get into it too much, but I will say that it seems like there's a lot of parking, beach parking in Del Mar. Maybe it fills up. I don't know. My recollection of being down there is there's a lot of beach parking. I just am concerned about these requirements with ADUs and JADUs. I think that the commission's experienced a lot of political pushback on this. So I'm just concerned about it. And so I don't know how you want to proceed here with this one.
We can ask the city. I don't know if the city is available to answer questions. This is also a pretty well, not entirely comprehensive, but it is an LCP amendment that has been negotiated over a significant period of time with the city. And my understanding is that the city is still in discussions with HCD over housing issues and ADU issues. If the city and HCD conclude that there are problems with the city's implementation of the ADU statutes, the city would need to come back to the commission for another LCP amendment. So I guess my point is that this is not the end of the road potentially, and that there are always opportunities to amend the LCP. But at this point, we didn't see a basis under the LUP to make additional changes to the suggested modifications based on the commission standard of review. If there are housing statute reasons to make changes, HCD will be working with the city on those, and we might see those come back to the commission as an amendment in the future.
Just one more comment. I just want to say then, I understand that this is has a lot of dimensions to it and isn't something that we could step back from today. But I will say that the commission, myself and I know my colleagues, feel very strongly that this requirement for parking for ADUs is something that we're generally not supportive of. This is an LUP, I assume that went, is from prior years. In general, I think that the feeling of this commission is we're very supportive of ADUs, we're very supportive of JADUs, and we don't want these parking requirements to get in the way. So I think going forward, or as we evaluate LCPs and LUPs, that is going to be the position of the commission, I would imagine.
And I'd like to note that we do have the City of Del Mar on Zoom, if you so wish.
I'd also like to clarify, this is replacement parking for parking that's lost as a result of the ADU, not parking for the ADU. It's not a new requirement.
Thank you so much. Okay, so we have Commissioner Bochco, Commissioner Kelly, and then Commissioner Wilson. You're good? Okay. Commissioner Kelly?
Excuse me, Chair. Before we continue going down this road, I am getting this, so this is on the consent calendar.
Right.
If one commissioner would like to have a hearing on this instead, then we can pull it off consent and have a hearing today, because it was on the regular calendar to begin with on this item. So I'm not recommending anything, just reminding the commission that there is that procedure if you have enough concerns that you want to have a full hearing on this item.
Okay. Are your comments on this item? So, I guess let me just ask, do we want to have a hearing on this item?
Yes.
Yes?
I hear what you're saying. I'm not requesting a hearing on this. I think I've made my statement with regard to where the commission is, I think, on this, or at least where I am.
Okay, Commissioner Kelly.
I'd like to have a hearing on this item. I think that the language in section 15.1 is inconsistent with what staff is recommending, where it says the ADU shall provide one off-street parking space, which is not language that reflects replacement parking. And so I think there's inconsistency with what our goals are around replacement parking and what this language is that mandates ADU parking. And I'd like to get clarity and get staff from the city to weigh in. My comments are consistent with Commissioner Hart on this, that I think requiring parking for ADUs and using the language in here with respect to the Coastal Act is inconsistent with the values of our pro-ADU policies. Thanks.
Okay, so, and this is 15A, is that correct? Sorry.
18C.
Yeah, I'm supportive. In that case, I would support the hearing, and that could go forward today then in this case, right?
Okay, so we're gonna put 18C back on the regular agenda, and then we will move forward with the other items that have been moved from the regular agenda. Are there any comments on items outside of 18C? Commissioner Nothoff?
No, I was just prepared to make a motion, so.
Okay,
Hold on.
Commissioner Wilson.
Yeah, only because I may have to leave this meeting before we get to that point. But I will say that even though in the current context you may not meet the current standards of what is like a transit threshold, that can change. We're considering that in my community right now in terms of like bringing up our bus routes to 15-minute turnarounds, and we're having to think about the land use implications of that. And so it may not be the current condition, but we should be doing these ordinances and moving these things forward with the future in mind. And that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so we're going to put 18C back on the regular agenda for the full presentation. If there's no further questions or comments, I'll turn it to Commissioner Nothoff for a motion on the items that have been pulled from the regular agenda and put on consent.
Excuse me, just wanted to note that, including the item that we just pulled off, there's over half a dozen housing-related items on either consent or items pulled from the regular calendar that staff is doing a good job of moving forward expeditiously. And just because we're not having whole hearings on these doesn't mean that the Coastal Commission isn't very aware of housing needs and is moving forward as quickly as possible. So I appreciate the work that the staff's doing on that, and I would move approval of consent calendar for items removed from the regular calendar.
Okay, so motion by Commissioner Nothoff, seconded by Commissioner Bochco. Turn to Ms. Miller for a roll call vote on this item.
Commissioner Escalante?
Yes.
Escalante, yes. Commissioner Harmon?
Yes.
Harmon, yes. Commissioner Hart?
Yes.
Hart, yes. Commissioner Kelly?
Yes.
Kelly, yes. Commissioner Lowenberg?
Yes.
Lowenberg, yes. Commissioner Nothoff?
Aye.
Nothoff, yes. Commissioner Turnbull Sanders?
Yes.
Turnbull Sanders, yes. Commissioner Uranga?
Aye.
Uranga, yes. Commissioner Wilson?
Yes.
Wilson, yes. Commissioner Bochco?
Yes.
Bochco, yes. Chair Cummings?
Aye.
Cummings, yes. The vote is unanimous.
Thank you so much. Okay, that moves us on to item number 8, which is our enforcement report, and I'll turn it over to Ms. Hagee to give us the update on the enforcement report. Sure, yeah, actually, okay, so before we move on to our enforcement report, we're going to take a 10-minute break, and so we will be back at 10:40. Welcome back. We're going to move on to item number 8, which is our enforcement report. I'll turn it over to Lisa Hagee to provide that presentation.
Thank you very much, Chair and Commissioners. Good morning. So today's presentation is required by Section 30809 of the Coastal Act, and so we're reporting to you on an Executive Director cease and desist order, or what we'll call an EDCDO, that the Executive Director, Dr. Hucklebridge, issued to Cable Offshore Corporation on February 18th, 2025. The order was issued to address ongoing development along the Los Flores pipeline along the Gaviota Coast in Santa Barbara County. As you may recall, we reported on another EDCDO issued to Sable in November of last year. As we'll discuss in greater detail, that EDCDO was issued after Commission staff became aware of potential Coastal Act violations taking place along the Los Flores pipeline, including excavation with heavy equipment, removal of major vegetation, grading and widening of roads, installation of metal plates over watercourses, dewatering and discharge of water, pipeline removal, replacement and reinforcement, installation of safety valves, and other development associated with the pipeline. Among other things, that EDCDO directed Sable to immediately cease all work, provide detailed information as to the scope of their activities being undertaken, and to apply for CDPs for past and any desired future development activities at the site. As we will discuss in a moment, EDCDOs are of limited duration, and this was intended to address the time period until they could apply for a CDP, and we immediately offered to assist them in that process. As you may also recall from public comments during the November hearing, October hearing, December hearings, and at length yesterday morning, this is an issue of significant public interest. For months, Commission staff have worked diligently to resolve the alleged violations. In response to the November EDCDO, Sable did cease work, though, as described in greater detail later, they quickly resumed work upon the expiration of that EDCDO. Despite the failure to apply for a CDP, which was required by the first EDCDO, which provided for a CDP application deadline of March 12th, which was yesterday. As you know, the CDP application process is critically important since it allows for an analysis of potential impacts to coastal resources, and CDPs can provide for conditions to reduce harm to coastal resources and provide mitigation where necessary. This is not the case for work that's done without a permit, such as the work at issue here. Because Sable resumed work quickly without applying for any CDP, the staff again provided Sable with notice that a second EDCDO would be issued if they did not again cease work until they obtained a CDP. When Sable declined to do so, the second EDCDO was issued. I would again point out that Commission staff, both permitting and enforcement, continue to encourage Sable to apply for such CDPs and remain ready and willing to review and assist with any CDP application process. We had hoped that we would be before you today with a CDP application for your consideration rather than remaining in the enforcement context. I also want to note that this presentation doesn't include the entirety of the legal or factual analysis, as this case may be returning to you in the future in the form of either a CDP application or a proposed commission-issued order, or both. The rest of the presentation today will be presented by our lead enforcement attorney for this matter, Stephanie Cook.
Thank you. Thank you. Next slide, please. Under Section 13187B of the Commission's regulations, we are required to report to you at the next Commission hearing whenever the Executive Director issues an EDCDO. As Lisa mentioned, and as I will describe in greater detail today, this EDCDO was issued in response to ongoing development taking place along the Los Flores pipeline. This is part of a larger pipeline system owned and operated by Sable Offshore Corporation. This presentation will discuss the events leading up to the issuance of the February 18th EDCDO, including issuance of a November EDCDO as well. Next slide, please. The authority for the Executive Director to issue an EDCDO is found in Section 30809 of the Coastal Act, and a summary of that section is shown here on this slide. This section states the Executive Director may issue an EDCDO to enforce the requirements of a local coastal program. The statute authorizes the Executive Director to do so in instances where the county declines to enforce. Under Section 30809C, an EDCDO can include terms and conditions that the Executive Director determines are necessary to avoid irreparable injury. It's intended, as mentioned before, as a temporary order to address short-term issues like these where there is not sufficient time to bring a formal commission action. Sorry. Next slide, please. For context as to the physical location of the sites, this slide provides a map depicting the pipeline, which is part of the larger Santa Ynez unit. As you can see in the blue boxed section, there are 3 offshore platforms. The dark blue line depicts the pipeline, which travels from those 3 platforms to the onshore processing facilities located along the coastline. Next slide, please.
Before addressing the enforcement actions which have taken place over the past few months and which lead up to the issuance of this EDCDO, we want to acknowledge the significant history of this location and the pipeline. As we've heard from public comment, as Lisa mentioned, over the past few months, and as we heard yesterday and previous hearings, and this case has generated a great deal of public interest for several reasons. As most of the people here are aware, this pipeline ruptured in 2015, spilling over 142,000 gallons of oil into the ocean and along the coastline. As you can see in this slide, the spill originated at an onshore location along the pipeline, and it flowed through a culvert onto Refugio Beach and into the ocean. The oil from the spill washed up to many other beaches, both up and down coast, and it caused numerous beach and ocean closures. The impacts to wildlife and coastal resources were extensive and required years and tens of millions of dollars to remediate. Next slide, please. As you may recall from our presentation in November of last year, Commission staff issued a notice of violation letter to Sable on September 27th, 2024, relating to work that Sable had undertaken at locations along the Las Flores pipeline. This notice of violation which was directed to Sable, directed them to do, among other things, immediately cease all work and provide Commission staff with greater information as to the full scope of the work that was undertaken, as well as any future proposed work. When Sable did not fully comply with the terms of this notice of violation, the executive director issued an EDCDO. Next slide, please. Similar to the notice of violation, the EDCDO, which was issued on November 11th, 2024, directed Sable to immediately cease all work, and again directed Sable to provide full information as to the scope of the work, which had not yet been received. The EDCDO also required Sable to submit both an application for an after-the-fact CDP and to seek authorization for development previously undertaken, as well as an application for CDP for any future proposed work. In the days leading up to the issuance of this November EDCDO, Commission staff worked closely with Sable in hopes of reaching a consent order. Unfortunately, we were unable to reach those agreeable terms and issued the EDCDO unilaterally. Despite this, Commission staff remained hopeful that they could continue productive conversations with Sable going forward, and remained similarly hopeful that Sable would comply with the order and submit applications for CDPs. As an accommodation, Commission staff provided a longer deadline for those applications, which extended to March 11th, a date beyond the February 10th expiration of the November EDCDO. Unfortunately, despite the extended deadline and the efforts on the part of Commission staff to assist with this application process, Sable has yet to apply for a CDP for ATF work or for future proposed work. However, we continue to have discussions with them and encourage them to do so. Upon the February 10th expiration of the prior EDCDO, Sable very quickly resumed work. Next slide, please. On February 14th, Commission staff began receiving several concerning reports that Sable had already staged construction equipment and potentially resumed operations despite not having fully complied with the terms of the previously issued EDCDO. These reports described numerous excavators, cranes, staging of pipe replacement parts, and other construction activities, some of which appeared to be conducted in environmentally sensitive areas. This image, taken February 18th, shows construction equipment along the pipeline under an oak tree. Next slide, please. Since these initial reports on February 14th, Commission staff have continued to receive reports of Sable's ongoing work, which has occurred in the evening hours, which can be seen on this slide, as well as through weekends. Commission staff have confirmed with Sable that Sable intends to continue these development activities and does not intend to cease operations. Sable has asserted that these activities have been pre-authorized or otherwise do not need a CDP based on representations made by Santa Barbara County. Commission staff disagree with this position and maintain that Sable must seek authorization for the development activities undertaken, as well as proposed future activities. Because Sable indicated that they intended to continue development activities which present an imminent threat to coastal resources, Commission staff provided a notice of intent to issue an EDCDO on February 16th. If Sable did not, among other things, cease that work, and when Sable did not, a second EDCDO was issued on February 18th. This second EDCDO on February 18th directed Sable to, among other things, immediately cease all work. This EDCDO expires in 90 days, but includes language providing Sable with notice of intent to commence proceedings for a cease and desist order, restoration order, and administrative penalty action for a future hearing. Next slide, please. As we've discussed, and as has been conveyed in public comment, there are great concerns about the specific location of this pipeline due to the extensive damage caused by the 2015 oil spill. However, the locations where Sable has undertaken development are also particularly concerning because they are within and adjacent to important habitat areas that have the likelihood to support wildlife species that are rare and particularly sensitive to disturbance. One example of such species is the pond turtle, which can be seen in this slide and is proposed for federal listing as a threatened species and designated as a species of special concern in California. The image on the right was taken at the west bank of Gaviota Creek in an environmentally sensitive habitat area on February 20th, 2025, just 2 days after the issuance of the EDCDO. In this image, you can see a pond turtle swimming in a pool, and that pool was located directly below a staged excavator. In that same pool, there were 3 southern steelhead documented. The southern steelhead is listed as an endangered species under the Federal Endangered Species Act and is a candidate for listing under California's Endangered Species Act. Not only does Sable's continued work potentially threaten these species because of the location, but the timing is also important. Right now, it is bird nesting season, red-legged frog breeding season, and southern steelhead migratory spawning season. The red-legged frog is a species which is listed as threatened under the Federal Endangered Species Act as well. Without appropriate and necessary safeguards and monitors in place, this work has the potential to create damage to these habitat areas. These kind of safeguards and details are the exact things considered in a full analysis conducted through the CDP process. Next slide, please. Again, the CDCDO will likely be followed by a future commission action. However, due to immediate concerns surrounding the negative impacts of Sable's ongoing work and potential for damage to coastal resources, including those located in environmentally sensitive habitat areas and wetlands, an EDCDO was needed for more immediate action. We recognize that there are a lot of moving pieces surrounding this issue, and Commission staff have been working diligently to resolve the violations discussed here. We're continually assessing the best path forward and next steps. This concludes our report, and we're happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much for that report. Just like to see if there's any members of the public signed up to speak to us on this item.
Yes, we have 2 members of the public signed up.
Okay.
So we'll start in the room. We have Jennifer Savage from Surfrider. And then on Zoom, we have Tessa Kardasakis.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair Cummings, Commissioners, Jennifer Savage, Surfrider Foundation. I know you've already heard a lot about Sable Offshore's effort to restart offshore oil drilling off the Santa Barbara coast, and in fact, you will hear more testimony from our legal department on this item, but I wanted to just take a few extra minutes to emphasize the importance of enforcement. I believe that this is warranted because without enforcement of California's coastal and environmental laws, those regulations have no practical effect. Enforcement is what enables us to prevent tragedy rather than desperately scramble to recover after something terrible happens. We are grateful to Ms. Hagee and the enforcement team for their tireless commitment to protecting California's public access and coastal resources. Sable Offshore's illegal activities show blatant disregard for both rule of law and public safety, and your enforcement team's efforts to correct that deserve maximum appreciation. We also note that Sable still plans to perform work within Gaviota State Park, and we ask the Commission to do anything it can to prevent such work until and unless Sable obtains a coastal development permit. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And then Tessa Kardasakis.
Good morning, Chair Cummings and the Commissioners. My name is Tessa Kardasakis, and I'm a legal intern at the Surfrider Foundation. The Surfrider Foundation is committed to protecting California's ocean, beaches, and waves for all people. This includes protecting the Santa Barbara coast from another potential oil spill and the environmental degradation that comes with offshore drilling. Surfrider was on the front lines of the Refugio oil spill in 2015. Preventing the restart of offshore oil drilling by Sable Offshore is one of our organization's priority campaigns. We have seen the damage done in the past and are committed to ensuring that that harm never happens again. Thank you, Lisa and Commission staff, for this enforcement update, and thank you to the Commission and staff for all your efforts on the issue to date. We appreciate that the Commission issued an EDCDO and a Notice of Intent to commence cease and desist proceedings. We ask that the commission and staff continue to protect the fragile ecosystem on this iconic section of our coast and prevent Sable from conducting any further unpermitted development. Surfrider supports this commission and staff in these efforts, and we thank you again.
Thank you. No more speakers.
All right, I'd like to bring it back to the commission to see if there's any members, commissioners like to speak. Commissioner Hart and Commissioner Harmon.
So I just wanted to clarify, Ms. Hagee and Ms. Cook. So we have the EDCDO. I always forget that. But the Sable is just continuing in spite of that. Is that the situation that we're confronted with today?
Yes.
And so what is the plan?
We have been looking at all options and working with our counsel and with the attorneys general to see what options exist. It's our understanding that the work is, as the public commenter just said, that the work has largely been done except for the work at the state parks property. And we have reached out to state parks and attempted to coordinate with them as well to try to address that remaining work that is being done on the pipeline. We have never, to be honest, we have not had EDCDOs issued before or commission orders issued before that were not complied with. That's not a typical situation that we've been faced with, and in the few cases where people didn't comply with orders issued by the commission, they did it commensurate with challenging legally the issuance of the order and getting a stay from a court, and that didn't happen here. So the next step that we have, we included a notice of intent for a commission order with the EDCDO. Our regs and statute provide for that authority, so we will be bringing something to you at probably the April hearing for your consideration.
Thank you. And through the chair, as a 15-year former member of the State Parks Commission, given the importance of this action that Sable is taking and they're now requesting state parks, I assume, to go through the park, I think that's something that really should come to the State Parks Commission. It's a very important policy issue. I strongly recommend that we reach out to the commission and ask that this come before them prior to any decision by the State Parks Department to allow the work to go through the state parks. Thank you. Or through Gaviota. Thank you.
Through the chair, I would just add that the authority that they are seeking from state parks is a right of entry permit and a new easement.
Commissioner Harmon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, I'll start just by saying I feel such an incredible sense of urgency and concern on the subject, as I know everyone does, but particularly in Santa Barbara County. And have to start with my incredible gratitude, Ms. Hagee, to you and your team for how quickly, I think I sent a message to Director Hucklebridge, and you guys had already engaged and were having these important conversations and were well ahead of this. So I really, truly appreciate it. And I know everyone, particularly in Santa Barbara County, feels the same way. So I had to start with that. I really just have one, and I think I asked a similar question when this came up previously. There's such complicated jurisdictional issues here, and it's tough to sort of understand where and what these different entities and agencies and how they come into play. A lot of questions I've gotten around this surround what is our authority at the Coastal Commission. Certainly there's the EDCDO and the stopping of the work and the repair, but what, if anything, is our ability to influence the restart altogether, separately from, and my understanding is that it's quite limited, but I was hoping you could address that question, not just specifically as it pertains to the repairs, which is sort of in one bucket, but broadly speaking on the restart. Whose court is that question really in? Where is that ball landing, and to what extent does it touch on our authority?
I can take a first crack at this, and then Deputy Counsel help run and executive director can weigh in as well. It's complicated because there are there are geographic jurisdictional issues. We have jurisdiction over the offshore work, and I don't know if people noticed that, but Stephanie mentioned it, that there was additional offshore work that was done that was clearly in our jurisdiction and did not have a permit. The onshore is split between our jurisdiction, but most of the unpermitted development took place in the county's jurisdiction. Some of it that is also in our appeals jurisdiction. So it's a little turgid. But one of the issues is that we can take enforcement action that is broader than the permitting action. So for anything that's in the coastal zone, we can take an enforcement action. And we asked the county to take action here, and they declined to do so, or they did not respond. And so we were able to take the enforcement action. I don't know that your view about the county is as unanimous as you said, but in any event,
Maybe not in our political leadership.
well, I don't know. The politics of the county are beyond my ken, but I just know that that they declined to take action here. So we stepped in. There are additional jurisdictional questions about the authorities. There are many agencies that have some jurisdiction over this pipeline, both the repairs and the restart. And for some reason, we've been the lead on most of those issues thus far. With regard to restart, we are looking at those issues. They're complicated, and we haven't publicly opined about it. It's just because our jurisdiction flows from any unpermitted development and or a violation of a permit condition, and so we're looking at all of the potential jurisdictional hooks that we might have. Would you like to add to that, Alex?
Ms. Hagee's right. I mean, the short answer is that we don't yet have a definitive answer on whether or not the commission has jurisdiction over the restart, and it may be the case that the law just isn't clear on that issue. We're looking into that.
Thank you very much. I truly appreciate all of your work. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Are there any other commissioners who have questions or comments on this item?
Well, yesterday we heard from testimony, and there was a request to have the Attorney General's office get more engaged in this. Is the Deputy Attorney General here, or what's the status there?
We've been in conversations with several folks at the Attorney General's office since the day after the lawsuit was filed, and we've been talking about options with them, and there are a lot of legal complexities there as well, and they're certainly very much engaged, and we're trying to figure out what the best next step is.
That's great.
I would just add, because Alex alluded to it, but we didn't talk about it earlier, I don't think, but in the middle of all of this, between the two EDCDOs, Sable sued the commission. And so, and although we haven't gotten served with that lawsuit, but we are aware of it, but they did not challenge the EDCDOs, which one had expired and the other hadn't yet issued. So those issues are not before the court. So it didn't raise the issues that I was talking about before about seeking a stay or anything.
Actually, they did challenge the first EDCDO, even though it had already expired, but right. They challenged it, not, well, they did challenge it, even though it had expired.
So what are they suing over?
They are suing to establish, well, they are claiming that the original EDCDO and that the notice of violation that we issued prior to that EDCDO were legally invalid, and that they effected a temporary and a permanent taking by delaying their operations.
All right, any further questions or comments? Okay, seeing none. Well, I just want to thank, first and foremost, the members of the public who've been advocates and really trying to bring this to our attention and bring it to the attention of just the community at large here in California and beyond, because this is the flagrant dismissal of our laws and coastal protections is just completely unacceptable. And so I just want to thank our enforcement team for their diligence in trying to be proactive in this matter. And we're gonna have more conversations on this in closed session for sure, and this is gonna be something that's gonna be ongoing. But I just want to express my appreciation for all the work that our staff has been doing to try to hold Sable accountable for all the environmental degradation that they've been doing. So with that, if there's no further questions or comments, there's no vote or action to be taken on this item. So we will continue moving forward. And,
Thank you.
Yeah, and so thank you for that presentation and for the engagement. With that, we'll move on to item number 9. This is our energy, ocean resources, and federal consistencies, and I'll turn it to staff for a presentation on this item.
Thank you. Just give us one quick second to shuffle spots here.
Thank you. This brings us to item 9, the Deputy Director's Report for the Energy, Ocean Resources, and Federal Consistency Division. Our Deputy Director, Cassidy Teufel, couldn't be here today, and so I'm filling in for him this month. We have 2 negative determinations to report this month, as well as 4 immaterial permit amendments for your consideration. No comments or objections have been received on these items, though we are aware of 1 member of the public signed up to speak, and there are several others available for questions. We are asking whether 3 or more commissioners object to any of the items in the Deputy Director's report. Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right, are there members of the public who'd like to speak on this item?
Yes, just confirming that we do have 1 person who wishes to speak, Leslie Purcell. And Leslie, you're moving in as a panelist right now. You should be able to unmute. When you're able to, please go ahead.
Hi, this is Leslie Purcell. I wish to comment on the last item in the report regarding SoCal Gas and a site in the Barrio Wetlands Ecological Reserve. And I am in favor of restoration of this small area of wetlands and the planting of native plants and the ability of SoCal Gas to water and weed and restore that site. I just wanted to raise the issue. Well, it's in the conditions, and I appreciate that you have drawn out the attention to the possible active bird nest in this area, as this new time frame is within bird nesting season. So I just wanted to reiterate that this is very important and that the buffers be recognized and observed, and any nesting birds would be protected there. I also wanted to just acknowledge that there is this, SoCal Gas has this underground reservoir storage of natural gas. And so the testing is very important, because we have heard that there in the past has been leakage in various areas around the wetlands. And we are trying to protect the Barrio Wetlands as we can and restore it to its best functioning self. So thank you very much for your work. I appreciate it.
Thank you. And again, we have 5 on Zoom available for questions.
Thank you so much. Okay, are there any questions or comments from commissioners on this item? Seeing none, do 3 or more commissioners object to the staff recommendation? Seeing none, the commission concurs. Okay, thank you so much for that presentation. Moving on, item number 10, federal consistency. Is there anything to report on this item?
No.
Okay. Moving on, item number 11, Deputy Director's report from the North Coast District.
Good morning, Chair Cummings and Commissioners. Item 11 is the Deputy Director's report for the North Coast District, which includes 1 waiver and 1 permit amendment for development in Del Norte and Mendocino counties. Staff is not aware of any opposition to these items, and we are asking whether 3 or more commissioners object.
Okay, are there any comments on this item?
No speakers.
Any comments from commissioners? Sure, go ahead.
I have a question for you, Shauna, but it's not on the report. It's just kind of seeing if it's going to come before us at all. And it's in Delaware County, I think they're going through the process of passing an ordinance to do some significant limitations on fireworks after a very almost tragic incident that happened on the last 4th of July, where a bunch of people got injured, but a 3-year-old had life-threatening injuries, so, and probably life-altering injuries. So in the county, kind of took that to heart and is moving forward. So are we going to at some point be looking at something like that, or is that totally out of our jurisdiction?
I'm not aware of what's going on with this, but happy to look into it and report back.
Thanks so much, Hannah.
All right, do 3 more commissioners object to the staff's recommendation? Seeing none, the commission concurs with the staff recommendation on this item, which moves us now to item number 14, South Coast District Deputy Director's Report for Orange County. Turn it back over to staff for that presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In the Deputy Director's Report today, we are reporting the City of Dana Point's adoption of the Commission's suggested modifications related to their housing update. The Executive Directors determined the city's actions legally adequate to complete the certification process on that item. We're also reporting on the issuance of 3 emergency permits, one to address bluff stability concerns for a home in Dana Point, another to address bluff stability concerns that threaten a sewer pump station in San Clemente, and the third has to do with removal of a highly invasive tube worm species that threatens habitat in San Diego Creek and Upper Newport Bay. There are also 3 waivers and 1 CDP time extension for routine projects in San Clemente. There's no known opposition, so we're asking whether 3 or more commissioners object to any of the waivers or the single CDP time extension in the report.
Thank you so much. Are there any members of the public signed up to speak to us on this item?
No speakers.
Okay, bring it back to the commission. Any questions or comments? Do 3 or more commissioners object to the staff recommendation? Seeing none, the commission concurs. That moves us on to item number 15, local coast, nope, 15 is done. That actually moves us on to item number 16, coastal permit application, 16A application number 5-23-0233, Los Cerritos Wetlands Authority. I'll turn it back to staff for a presentation on this item.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There is a staff PowerPoint on this item, if we could bring that up. And Liliana Roman with our South Coast District Office is going to present this matter. Go ahead, Liliana.
Good morning, Commissioners. Next, we have item TH16A, a CDP application from the Los Cerritos Wetlands Authority, or LCWA, for a 2-phase restoration of an open space site previously used for oil production to wetland and upland habitat at the southern Los Cerritos Wetlands in the city of Seal Beach in Orange County. Next slide. The Southern Los Cerritos Wetlands Restoration Project, covering a 100-acre area, is part of a much larger restoration program for the 503-acre Los Cerritos Wetlands Complex, shown here on this slide, which is owned by the applicant. The LCWA is a joint powers authority comprised of the State Coastal Conservancy, the Rivers and Mountains Conservancy, and the cities of Seal Beach and Long Beach. Next slide. Historically, the Los Cerritos Wetlands and the subject 100-acre site was almost entirely tidal wetland with a few natural streams and intertidal flat channels. Over time, the coastal salt marsh habitat was converted primarily to ruderal uplands with minimal tidal connections when dredge material associated with the excavation and concrete channelization of the nearby San Clemente River was channelized, and the Haynes Cooling Channel, where spread within the project area, and the area was used for oil production. In the early 2000s, in conjunction with an adjacent housing development project, through a requirement imposed by the condition, the Hellman family sold the 100-acre area to the state to be used for open space and habitat restoration. Then in 2023, the applicant received $32 million in grants to implement the first phase of the proposed restoration. The project boundary is shown here on this slide. The site is composed of two parcels: the 100-acre South LCWA site, previously known as the Hellman Ranch Lowlands, and a 3.5-acre parcel owned by the State Lands Commission, which is leased to the LCWA for its management. The site contains wetlands, native and non-native upland vegetation, and a concrete slab foundation, miscellaneous gravel roads, and other structures left over from prior ranching and oil operations. Existing public access is currently restricted to docent-led guided tours of the wetlands. However, there are adjacent public trails that provide views of the wetlands from Gum Grove Park. There are no trails open to the general public currently on site. Next slide. The applicant proposes to undertake restoration of the site in two phases. The phase 1 restoration area is of a 53.5-acre site, focusing on existing habitat areas closest to the Hellman Channel within the site, which provides ocean water and supports the existing remaining salt marsh habitat. As part of phase 1, the applicant would remove or cap oil sumps and associated contaminated soils left over from the previous oil operations, would raise the existing access road labeled here as First Street out of the floodplain, and construct a perimeter berm between this site and this still operating oil field just north of the site. Expand public access by building a stewardship site, parking, new trails, and includes new features to increase local Native American tribes' access to this sacred site. The remaining majority of the site will be converted into tidal wetlands or native upland plant communities. Habitat will include southern coastal salt marsh, transitional wetlands, coastal sage scrub, southern bluff scrub, and mule fat scrub. Phase 1 area work is designed to improve and expand existing habitat areas that will become further enhanced by the improved hydrological conditions provided in Phase 2. Next slide. Phase 2 encompasses a 50-acre area and will commence sometime after 2029 when access to the Haynes cooling channel becomes available after the nearby Haynes power plant completes its transition away from using the channel ocean water for cooling activities. Phase 2 will continue excavation to extend the new subtidal channel across the entire Phase 2 area, creating smaller feeder channels. The berm separating the Haynes cooling channel and the newly created subtidal channel would then be breached to expand the tidal range into both Phase 1 and Phase 2 areas. Because of this new tidal connection, the salt marsh habitat will become fully tidal wetlands. Salt pan habitat areas proposed in the Phase 2 area, along with transitional wetland habitat, invasive plant removal, and the restoration of about 40 acres of native upland habitat. The overall habitat types restored in Phase 2 include southern coastal salt marsh, coastal sage scrub, southern bluff scrub, and mule fat scrub, thus expanding existing belting savanna sparrow habitat and supporting other wildlife, including light-footed ridgeways rail, least bell's vireo, coastal California gnatcatcher, and burrowing owl into these new areas. Next slide. This slide depicts the grading footprint of both Phase 1 and Phase 2 areas. The grading plan is designed to avoid and minimize impacts to existing high-functioning salt marsh habitat, transitional wetland habitats, and tribal cultural resources. Some off-site export will be required to haul away contaminated soils removed due to the previous oil operations. In total, about 435,000 cubic yards of grading would occur over the 100-acre site. During both phases, all existing dirt roads crisscrossing the site and previous filled areas will be graded down to intertidal marsh plain and transitional wetland elevations. Biological and tribal monitoring are proposed to occur during all grading activities. In total, about 8 of the existing 27 acres of wetlands would be impacted temporarily, shown here in the green hatched areas. In general, these impacted wetlands will be reestablished and enhanced as part of the proposed project. Upon completion, the project will result in an additional 36 acres of wetlands, totaling 63 acres of wetlands, more than offsetting the unavoidable approximately 8 acres that will temporarily be impacted during excavation. Next slide. In general, the impacted wetlands are proposed to be reestablished, expanded, and enhanced as tidal, salt marsh, or transitional wetland habitat. Yes. So like I said, a total of 63.38 acres of subtidal, salt marsh, salt flat, and transitional habitat areas will be created. Next slide. Until the late 1800s, the wetlands on the site consisted of a network of tidal channels, vegetated wetlands, and upland areas. Ancestors of the existing Gabrieleño Native American tribes inhabited the area since time immemorial, and the area continues to be sacred to them and to other indigenous communities, including the neighboring Ahashemen tribes that continue to visit this culturally significant area. Thus, tribal engagement is and has been a significant focus for this project. On the applicant's side, this engagement has included tribal consultations early on in the EIR process, the formation of a tribal advisory group, and incorporating traditional ecological knowledge and tribal perspectives into the restoration design. Commission staff has similarly been consulting with various tribal entities about this site for decades and for years regarding the subject project and related development at this site. This site is a tribal cultural resource itself, as are the existing ecological resources, and there is also potential for resource deposits to exist that would be impacted by project activities. For example, there would be approximately 450,000 cubic yards of grading, which is stated by the applicant is the minimum necessary to provide the desired tidal influence for wetland expansion and enhancement, and for the necessary remediation of contaminated soils. Thus, the proposed restoration both impacts tribal cultural resources and offers enhanced and expanded ecological function, as well as an increase in tribal access opportunities as compared to current conditions. As each tribe has its own culture and perspective, not all tribes are in agreement about whether this project should move forward. However, all tribal representatives that commission staff have consulted with agree that if the project is approved, project activities must be carefully monitored by appropriate Native American monitors. Next slide. Thus, Special Condition 4 is imposed requiring submittal of an archaeological and tribal cultural resource monitoring and treatment plan prepared in consultation with tribes. Special Condition 2 requires final plans that include a tribal cultural resource site plan prepared in consultation with the affected tribes, depicting locations of the tribal access amenities proposed in collaboration with tribes. And these are shown here on this slide. The plan also clearly indicates that these improvements will be constructed as part of Phase 1 of the project and will become available for tribes' use at the end of Phase 1. Additionally, Special Condition 9 requires submittal of a tribal access plan developed in collaboration with affected tribes to ensure access to the area for religious and ceremonial gatherings, resource and material gathering, and other tribal gatherings, and ensure such access shall be maintained in perpetuity. Next slide. In addition to the tribal access plan, as part of Phase 1 of the applicant, as part of Phase 1, the applicant is proposing to build new on-site public trails, a stewardship site, viewpoints, on-site parking, and educational interpretive kiosks and signs. The new public improvements are shown generally on this slide as the light blue shaded areas on the state lands parcel and the proposed trail alignments. These trails will connect to other nearby off-site parks, such as Gum Grove Park, shown in green shading, and other trails, such as the existing Hellman Ranch Trail. Next slide. Staff received 49 letters in support of the project from local tribes, elected officials, governmental agencies, and local residents, and also received 3 letters in opposition from the Gabrieleño Tongva San Gabriel Band of Mission Indians, the Sierra Club Angeles Chapter, Los Cerritos Wetlands Task Force, and from Patricia Martz, California Cultural Resources Preservation Alliance President. The comments submitted by the Gabrieleño Tongva San Gabriel Band of Mission Indians state a continued request for avoidance and preservation of existing tribal cultural resources and denial of the proposed project, given the multitude of resources in the area. It also contends noncompliance with the Commission CDP for the adjacent Hellman Ranch parcel. Over years of consultation with this tribe, Commission staff learned about the trauma associated with development at this site and requested information from the applicant early on in the process regarding project alternatives that would avoid or minimize disturbance of the site. The applicant's response pointed to the goals of the restoration, including to restore wetland processes and functions to the maximum extent feasible, and stated that the project has been designed to avoid and minimize earthwork. A reduced or no project alternative, as stated by the applicant, would limit the flow of tidal water in and out of the site and reduce the quantity and quality of the wetlands proposed to be restored. Staff published an addendum yesterday addressing the comments raised by the opponents and also proposing changes to the special conditions, new supportive findings, and some minor typo corrections to the staff report. Staff proposes clarifying language to Special Condition 2 and Special Condition 2 for final plans and Special Condition 4 for archaeological and tribal cultural resource and treatment plant to address the comments received. The applicant also requested revisions to Special Conditions 9, 10, and 11 to allow for the submittal of required plans prior to commencement of construction rather than prior to permit issuance. Additionally, new findings are included under the water quality findings section, clarifying that Special Condition 1, which requires adherence to the required mitigation measures per the project's mitigated negative declaration, also includes the submittal of a monitoring and adaptive management plan. This plan is for the monitoring, assessment, and ongoing management of potential hydrodynamic and water and sediment quality impacts to biological resources and human health from and to the restoration project after project completion. Next slide. Staff recommends the Commission find that with implementation of the mitigation measures described in the project's mitigated negative declaration and the recommended Special Conditions 1 through 12, the project would be carried out consistent with the coastal access, cultural resource, hazards, dredging, marine resource, and water quality protection policies of the Coastal Act. The applicant is in agreement with the findings of the staff report and all required special conditions to bring the project into conformance with the Coastal Act. The motion and resolution for this CDP are on page 6 of the staff report. This concludes staff's presentation.
Thank you so much, and thanks for all the hard work on this project. Seems pretty cool. Like to see if there's any members of the public who'd like to speak to us on this item.
Yes, we have a number of people sign up to speak.
How many people do we have?
We have 15 people signed up. A few are available for questions.
15 people signed up just for questions?
No. We have 12 people who wish to speak.
Okay.
So we have the applicant, Eric Zahn, who I believe is in person, and they have a presentation.
Could I please request 10 minutes for the applicant presentation? I'm here as the agent for the applicant.
We do usually allow a longer presentation for applicants.
Okay, go ahead.
I appreciate that.
Yep.
Chair Cummings, Commissioners, thank you for the opportunity to speak on this item. Eric Zahn, I am the...
Hang on one sec. Can we pull the clock up? Yep. And do you have slides?
I do.
Okay. So yeah, let's just wait till we get the slides up and the clock up. Cool. Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak on this item. My name is Eric Zahn. I'm the Principal Restoration Ecologist for Tidal Influence. We have been consulting for the applicant, the Los Rios Wetlands Authority, for the past 15 years. And I want to first thank your staff for a tremendous job on analyzing this very complex project in a very complex setting. They made my job easy today. I have two topics I want to cover. One, the need for this project, and two, the project merits. Historically, the Los Rios wetlands were 2,400 acres of coastal wetlands. 88% of those historic wetlands were tidal coastal salt marsh. Next slide. Within this red boundary is the remaining 500 acres that have potential to be restored. Slide. The Southern Los Rios Wetlands Restoration Project is within this additional red boundary that you see in front of you. The green areas are the historic tidal wetlands that existed in 1873. Predominantly tidal wetlands. Slide. 50 years later, oil was discovered in 1926 in the Seal Beach oil field, dramatically changing the landscape, and you can start to see oil sumps and other oil facilities showing up here in this 1928 aerial. Next slide. 10 years later, PCH was built, and the orientation of historic tidal channels and the San Gabriel River were altered. Next slide. By the mid-1950s, much of the tidal wetlands habitat had been filled in or otherwise greatly disconnected, and new roads and infrastructure began to be built, including a building on the State Lands Commission parcel. Next slide. The 1960s saw even more filling activities, leaving historic channels to dry, and the Haynes Cooling Channel is being created in this 1961 aerial. Next slide. By 1965, the Haynes Cooling Channel is complete, and the marine dredge materials required to create that channel have been dumped onto the LCWA's property, and that's shown by those bright white spots in that aerial. Those are all hypersaline soils throughout the property. Next slide. And in the late 1960s, the land is unrecognizable from just 100 years earlier. Sandy fill has been imported, and the site is predominantly uplands, with new oil sumps even expanding into the site. Next slide. By 1972, the last historic wetlands had been filled, and actually we start to see wetland vegetation establishing along the drainage ditches that have been created by the current landowner at that time. And then next slide, we will see the time frame of when the Coastal Act was passed. And at this point, the major land alterations had ceased, but for another 40 years, the land is managed essentially as an industrial area. After a century of degradation and neglect, the LCWA purchased this land in December of 2010. And since then, they have spearheaded 15 years of planning that has led to the development of the next slide's restoration plan. This is a vision for returning the tidal influence back to this site and for turning the land back to its former glory. We cannot achieve the historic 88% coastal salt marsh that once existed, but this project can double that amount of tidal wetlands with additional complementary habitats surrounding it. Next slide. This project comes with a number of impressive merits. It's extremely well-rounded, but it does not only check these boxes, it exceeds expectations. Coastal resiliency is designed into this project. It includes 13 acres of high marsh and salt pan habitat complemented by another 45 acres of transitional wetlands and upland habitat that will allow for the upslope migration of plant communities in the face of sea level rise, as well as being able to absorb future storm surges. Next slide. As mentioned by your staff, much of the land, actually about 30% of the land, will go ungraded and will be preserved to protect existing tidal wetlands, the endangered species that inhabit them, as well as existing landforms like bluffs and salt pans. Next slide. The LCWA has gone above and beyond in its inclusion of the local tribal community in this planning effort. After producing a traditional cultural landscape study, the LCWA developed a tribal advisory group that has met 10 times since 2021. This is a photo of our 9th meeting in December, and we actually brought the 90% designs to our local tribal leaders, and here we are. They are making edits, and these edits were brought directly to the design team to make alterations to the facilities to allow for continued tribal access. This is how it should work. Next slide. The project will support future scientific research by creating 12 experimental plots across 1.5 acres of land. This will be set aside for ecologists and climate scientists to study carbon sequestration and the effects of climate change on the restoration project over time. Additionally, this project is attempting to be the first sentinel site for the Southern California Wetlands Recovery Project's Estuary Regional Monitoring Program. And already protocols and procedures are detailed in the project's habitat restoration and monitoring plan. Next slide. The LCW has a long-standing relationship with the Conservation Corps of Long Beach. And our project management team is committed to having a youth workforce development program install all the landscaping, public trails, and public amenities of this project. The training opportunities for our local youth are invaluable, and involving our local Corps members in the capital project will allow for a collaboration that can be carried throughout the long-term operations and management of this land. Next slide. The LCWA Stewardship Program has been in operation since 2009 and attracted tens of thousands of members of the public for tours, restoration events, and cleanups. This project will include a new outdoor classroom area that will support the LCWA's growing education programs for under-resourced schools. Next slide. Over 1,000 new residential units and supportive commercial areas are coming to this part of the coast. And this project will create a trail system that will increase community connectedness to existing park spaces and regional trail systems such as the California Coastal Trail and the San Gabriel River Bike Path. Next slide. And finally, this is not a mitigation project. It is being funded with state dollars. Currently, the current planning effort is funded with grant funds from the State Coastal Conservancy and the Ocean Protection Council, and previous planning efforts were also funded by the Rivers and Mountains Conservancy and the California Department of Fish and Wildlife. So I want to thank our funders and thank you for this time.
Thank you so much. All right, we'll continue with the rest of our public comment.
Okay, we had one elected official sign up to speak, Long Beach Council Member Christina Duggan, but we aren't able to find them in the Zoom meeting. If Christina Duggan or any of their representatives are on Zoom, please raise your hand. Moving on from that, we have Adrian Morales of the Gabrielino San Gabriel Band of Mission Indians, and they're joining on a phone. So, Adrian Morales, you should be able to unmute now. If you should, you can press *6 to unmute. Adrian.
Hello, Commission.
Yep.
Hi.
Go ahead. We can hear you.
Okay, great. Hello, Commission. This is Adrian Morales. I'm the Tribal Cultural Resource Manager for the Gabrielino Tonga San Gabriel Band of Mission Indians. I am speaking on behalf of Chief and Chairman Anthony Morales. We continue to recommend that the project is denied for the purposes that tribal cultural resources have been identified for over the last 50 years or longer. This would comply to Public Resource Code, defining tribal cultural resources. Public Resource Code 2108.0.31 defines what a tribal cultural resource is, and this landscape is is defined as what the law is stating. So if the project was to go through, it would be in violation of this public resource code and the legalities that go with it. It was just to clarify that the legislator, it was the intent of the legislator in enacting Assembly Bill 52 to accomplish the protection of tribal cultural resources. So therefore, there would be no mitigation measure that would suffice the avoidance and the protection of the resources.
Okay.
So therefore, we
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Now we have public agency representatives. We have Amy Hutzel from Coastal Conservancy, followed by Chad Oberly, the Rivers and Mountains Conservancy. Amy Hutzel.
Morning, Chair Cummings and Commissioners. My name's Amy Hutzel, and I'm the Executive Officer of the State Coastal Conservancy. I'm here today to speak, well, I'm not here, I'm here today to speak in support of the Southern Los Cerritos Wetlands Restoration Project proposed by the Los Cerritos Wetlands Authority, which the Coastal Conservancy is a member of. The Conservancy, we've been working hand in hand with the Rivers and Mountains Conservancy and the cities of Seal Beach and Long Beach on the LCWA for many decades to protect and restore these regionally important wetlands. We recently provided a grant of $25.8 million to the Los Cerritos Wetlands Authority for this project. This amount of funding signifies the importance of this project to our agency and was thanks to the governor's climate package a few years ago. This is an incredible opportunity to restore critical wetland habitats and open up this resource for the community, which has been off limits to the public due to oil operations. The project will restore over 100 acres of historical salt marsh, increase sea level rise resilience, and increase public access connectivity to the San Gabriel River Trail and to adjacent communities, and provide dedicated tribal access amenities that were closely developed in consultation with several tribes over 4 years. I want to thank the Coastal Commission staff for the work on this. It's a momentous project for the LCWA, for the Coastal Conservancy, and for all the partners that have been involved over many years. And I respectfully encourage you to support this important project. Thank you.
Thank you. Chad Oberly from the Rivers and Mountains Conservancy.
Yes, good morning, Commissioners. My name is Chad Oberly. I'm a Staff Services Manager for the RMC. The San Gabriel and Lower Los Angeles Rivers and Mountains Conservancy strongly supports the implementation of the Southern Los Cerritos Wetlands Restoration Project and urges the Commission to approve the project's coastal development permit application. In 2021, the RMC supported this project through a $250,000 Proposition 68 grant to fund 65% designs, permitting, and project compliance with SCOUP. The project is located at the mouth of the San Gabriel River, and its goals are consistent with the RMC's mission to preserve open space and habitat and provide low-impact recreational and educational opportunities within our jurisdiction. The project is crucial for repairing the damage caused by over a century of oil drilling and industrial use, and is the first major step in restoring a significant portion of the historic wetlands complex. The approval authorizes the restoration of over 100 acres of habitat, supporting local wildlife and creating a more resilient ecosystem. Additionally, the project includes public access features such as a new trail system connecting Gum Grove Park and the San Gabriel River Trail. These amenities will benefit underserved communities, providing better access to nature and educational opportunities in a highly industrialized area. The project has wide-ranging support from nonprofits, tribal groups, local, state, and federal agencies. The longstanding collaboration among these groups underscores the significance of this project for both the environment and the community. The Rivers and Mountains Conservancy respectfully encourages the Commission to support this vital project, which will restore valuable coastal wetlands and provide a lasting benefit to wildlife, the community, and the environment. Thank you.
Thank you. And now moving on to our other general speakers, Olivia Jenkins, followed by Ann Cantrell, and then Anna Christensen. Olivia Jenkins.
Hello. Good morning, Commission. My name is Olivia. I'm the manager of scientific programs at the Friends of Ballona Wetlands. I am an avian biologist with a master's degree in conservation and restoration science from UC Irvine, and I've spent years monitoring local wildlife and helping restore Southern California ecosystems. I'm here today representing our organization and others belonging to the Wetlands Restoration Principles Coalition Steering Committee, specifically LA Waterkeeper, Heal the Bay, Ballona Wetlands Conservancy, E. Reed and Associates, LMU Center for Urban Resilience, and the Surfrider Foundation South Bay Chapter. Our coalition has submitted a letter of support which details our commitment to this vital restoration effort. We support the Southern Los Cerritos Wetlands Restoration Project because it fully aligns with our coalition's 9 guiding principles: functional integrity, scientific basis, ecological balance, appropriate scale, watershed hydrology, scientific monitoring, climate change resilience, compatible uses, and stakeholder inclusion. Given my background monitoring endangered or vulnerable species such as the coastal California gnatcatcher, the coastal cactus wren, and leaf spells vireo, I've seen firsthand how such efforts directly contribute to the recovery of at-risk species. The restoration of these wetlands ensures that species like the state endangered Belding savanna sparrow have a fighting chance to thrive in a more resilient environment that will be more adapted to sea level rise. I respectfully urge the California Coastal Commission to approve the project and the coastal development permit without delay. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Next, Ann Cantrell, followed by Anna Christensen, and then Corliss Lee. Ann Cantrell.
Good morning, Ann Cantrell, Sierra Club Los Cerritos Wetlands Task Force. This project is not restoration, but habitat creation and flood protection for private utilities and oil production. It will destroy existing salt pans and pickleweed needed by the endangered Belding savanna sparrow. Please deny or modify. Sierra Club urges all oil production be removed and no berms or roads built, no bulldozing or grading of this sacred part of Pavunga, no trails through the wetlands. All human activity should be on the perimeter. No picnic areas which brings trash and unhealthy food for wildlife. And no herbicide use in this designated environmentally sensitive habitat area /ESHA. With coming sea level rise, we should leave these wetlands to do what they do best: protect the area from flooding, absorb toxic chemicals, and provide habitat for birds, mammals, and reptiles. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Anna Christensen, Corliss Lee, and then Margot Griswold. Anna Christensen.
Yeah, I'm here. I signed my son up also to co-present this slideshow with me, which will take more than 2 minutes. So he's right here, and please start the slideshow. Irreplaceable. Next slide. Even though
hang on a second. Ms. Christensen, you just had your opportunity to present on this item.
Yeah.
No, she didn't. Oh,
yes.
Okay.
No, I'm just starting. You want to start?
Oh, I'm sorry. That was Ms. Cantrell. Sorry. Okay.
Yeah, they get us mixed up all the time.
Sorry about that. Go. Please proceed.
All right. It's an honor to be confused with Ms. Cantrell. Can you please start my time over? Thank you, and the slideshow over.
Yeah, if we can, start a time over at 2 minutes. Please proceed.
Irreplaceable. Next slide. Even though we would have this restoration of the wetlands in Los Cerritos, if you project out sea level rise, that wetland system that was restored would basically convert to a mudflat over the next 50 to 100 years. So the value of that restoration is really in question. Charles Lester, former Executive Director, California Coastal Commission. Next slide. Sacred places are vital to the cultural and spiritual well-being of tribes and tribal individuals. Multiple archaeological sites, including burials, are registered within the Los Cerritos wetlands and adjacent uplands, part of the larger sacred sites of Montechukna and Pavogna. Next. These physical places and tribal cultural resources are directly tied to the history, cultural identity, and sovereignty of tribes. Next. Impacts to the destruction of some places can interrupt, eliminate, and adversely affect integral cultural practices and beliefs, and thus obstruct tribal sovereignty. This was done by the city of Seal Beach, by the way. Next slide. These resources reflect a tribe's continuing cultural ties to the land and traditional heritage. Next. Tribal sites, including ancestral burial areas, are being lost at an alarming rate because lead agencies are approving land use development projects that do not consider cumulative losses or commit to avoidance and preservation in place. That includes all the agencies that testified so far in favor of this project. Next. During the construction of Heron Point on the mesa above the southern Los Cerritos wetlands, 35 ancestral burials were illegally unearthed. The village of Montechukna lies within the current project sites. Burials are in wetlands. They are at sea level, not just on mesas. Next. Biological resources are sacred to tribal peoples as an integral component of tribal resources. Next time we'll finish the slideshow. Next slide, please.
The grading footprint is 2/3 of the site. Next. The clearing footprint is 3/4 of the site. Next. The Gabrielino Tongva San Gabriel Band of Mission Indians continues to support and recommend the denial of the Los Cerritos Wetland Restoration Project. Sierra Club California finds that this project is not protective of existing coastal and tribal resources. The proposed benefits can be accomplished without grading, flooding, and erasing habitat, threatening wildlife, and destroying tribal cultural evidence. We ask that the Coastal Commission deny this CDP request. Additionally, I would just like to say that anybody who's in support of this project, I get you want to do the right thing, but don't fool yourself. You're destroying the land. You're using bulldozers put you in this mess, and now bulldozers is not going to get you out, man. You're going to dig up bodies. You're going to find graves. You're going to find former village sites. And what are you going to do then? This is more of the same from the same entities that have committed genocide and destroyed entire ecosystem and are continuing to destroy the planet. And you're doing it so you can drill oil in there and greenwash the project. Let's be real. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And we were able to locate Council Member Christina Duggan. Christina Duggan, if you're able to, please begin.
Hi, good morning. Thank you so much for having me here today. As council member for the Long Beach 3rd District, I strongly support the Southern Los Cerritos Wetlands Restoration Project and urge approval of its coastal development permit. This project is going to restore over 100 acres of wetlands, reversing a century of industrial damage, improving water quality, and enhancing biodiversity, and creating public access. It's also going to connect key trails, including Gum Grove Park, the Heron Point Cultural Trail, and the San Gabriel River Trail with 80 accessible paths, bike racks, and parking. The City of Long Beach and the City of Seal Beach are working together as partners on this critical effort, alongside nonprofits, tribal groups, and government agencies. This collaboration underscores the project's regional importance and shared commitment to the environmental restoration. I urge you to support this for its vital investment in our coastline and community. As the Los Cerritos Wetlands Chair, as the council member for the 3rd District, this project is critical to expanding our wetlands for our community. So thank you very much, and I urge you to support this item.
Thank you. Our last two speakers that we're able to find, Corliss Lee and then Margot Griswold. Corliss Lee.
Hi, this is Corliss Lee. The Sierra Club's alternative plan to the LCWA's Southern Los Cerritos Wetlands Restoration CDP. I'm going to read that. Restoration of the Southern Los Cerritos wetlands shall avoid grading, flooding, and building flood control, and solely focus on introducing native plants and other species onto the site. This would involve gradually clearing non-native plants without using heavy machinery or herbicides. Plantings would be appropriate to the wetlands ecosystem in each specific area, from tidal and saltwater marsh to uplands. As sea level rise increases, tidal flats and marsh habitat will gradually extend into the current uplands, accomplishing the desired results of the current plan without inflicting damage to tribal cultural sites and without a major displacement of birds and other wildlife. Any flood protection for the Hellman oil field must be assumed by that party and must be constructed on the property still owned by Hellman, not on the LCWA's Southern Los Cerritos wetlands. The portion of First Street crossing the wetlands should no longer serve as an access road to the Hellman oil field, as this private business has other access roads that does not cross wetlands. Public-private utility lines along First Street through the wetland should remain as is until directly threatened by sea level rise, at which time they should be discussed as part of a larger plan for the entire area at risk, including PCH and much of Seal Beach. The Southern Los Cerritos wetlands should continue to provide a sanctuary for wildlife, and this role should be prioritized over public access. Monthly guided tours, specifically arranged guided tours around the perimeters are acceptable.
Thank you
And
so
the
much.
LC, okay.
Thank you. And then Margot Griswold. You're free to unmute.
Hello, Margot Griswold, restoration ecologist. I just want to say that I would support the Sierra Club's proposal, and the fact that so many groups, the same groups, support this project with the same tired rhetoric. And really it is to continue this oil production in the wetland to devastate areas that's been part of, since the mid-90s through the present, to change and homogenize all our coastal wetlands for no reason at the moment. Other activities can be done to also restore the wetlands. This isn't really so much a restoration as it is conversions and making things hospitable for oil production. So I would ask you to not listen to the list of the people who support this. They're the same ones who are supporting the conversion of the Ballona wetlands to something it never was. They're also the same people who championed Bolsa Chica. And what do we have now at Bolsa Chica? Through this coastal engineering, but now they're looking for a more sustainable plan. It's only been like 17 years since they jettied open to provide more tidal wetlands to Bolsa Chica, the little purse that wasn't all tidal all the time. They're losing habitat, in fact, for the savanna sparrow. They're looking for sustainability, and that might include closing the engineered opening. So please,
Thank you.
don't fall for the same line all the time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. And then we had two other people that we weren't able to find, Mary Parcell and Elizabeth Lamb. Again, Mary Parcell and Elizabeth Lamb, if you're in the meeting, please raise your hand. Okay, we got one hand raised under the name Zoom user. I'm allowing you to speak. Please state your name and the person logged in under Zoom
Hello,
user.
hello, commissioners. I'm still learning the intricacies of Zoom, it appears. My name is Elizabeth Lamb, and I'm the executive director of the Los Cerritos Wetlands Land Trust. And I have just a few words to say about our support for the agenda item. I did want to lead off by thanking the Coastal Commission for your stewardship of the California coast. You've been in the news a little bit lately, and I just want to be one person from California who really appreciates the time and the effort you take to steward this important resource. So regarding this agenda item, the Los Cerritos Wetlands Land Trust, we are a Long Beach and Seal Beach based grassroots organization, and we are dedicated to protecting and restoring Los Cerritos wetlands, and that has been our mission for many years. When I speak here today, I'm speaking on behalf of the many thousands of members and supporters within our organization. We support the Coastal Development Permit for the Southern Los Cerritos Wetlands Restoration Project, and we have participated in the community planning for this project every step of the way. We're very excited about this project and the fact that it will restore tidal wetlands, wetland upland transition zones, and upland habitats, and is the first large-scale restoration of the Los Cerritos wetlands. We really look forward to the new, and might I add, responsible public access opportunities and the expanded educational and stewardship initiatives that this project will provide. I thank you for your time, and those are my remarks. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm seeing no other speakers.
Great. I want to thank members of the public for chiming in on this item. I'd like to invite the applicant back up if there's any rebuttal you might have or clarification you might be able to provide.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak again. First, I also want to thank all the public speakers on both sides. Over the many years, this project has only improved from our vocal community members not being afraid to share their concerns. We heard them years ago talk about how much they love salt pans, and so we're actually have special 3 acres set aside for salt pan restoration. They want us to conserve the existing wetlands that established after the degradation of the land. And like I said, 30% of the land is not being graded. And we also heard them expressing the need for more tribal involvement. And that is why the Tribal Advisory Group was formed. And the LCWA, as a public entity, as a neutral position on what groups should be involved and which ones should not, and has cast a wide net of invitations to all local tribal community members to be a part of the consortium that is a part of this planning effort. And we have 5 groups that participate on a quarterly basis now. We meet with them, and other groups that we continue to keep informed. So this, like all other planning efforts, is a challenge to get everybody to move forward. But we do have some wonderful advisors as well. We have a technical advisory committee that's made up of 20 different agencies and experts that guide us along. And we have a steering committee that keeps us moving along. You've heard from our local NGOs. I'm personally one of the community members, born and raised in Long Beach. Lived there for all of my life until just recently, and I got involved in this project in 2003. So half my life I've been working on this conservation effort, and my mission originally, and still is, to build awareness for this place. Many people didn't even know it existed when I first got involved. And also, part of that is sharing facts and dispelling myths. So, as far as making sure that the tribal resources are protected, that's our highest. This is an ecological restoration, but the tribal cultural layer it has risen to the top. And the project has assumed 18 mitigation measures through our CEQA documentation. We have a program EIR and a mitigated negative declaration. And those 18 mitigation measures assure that any resources, tribal or tribal cultural, that are found on site are protected, and that tribal monitors and archaeo monitors on site during all of the earthwork. And your staff did a great job of sharing the additional access planning that we will have to get the community of our tribal members out there on site utilizing it. Flood protection was mentioned, and that is a requirement of CEQA. Our project has to protect surrounding land, whether it's a neighboring oil field, a park, a residential area, or even a Haynes cooling channel. We have to, as part of our project, protect surrounding landowners from flooding that may be occurred based on our modeling of current and future sea levels. We do have easements that go through the property. Those are irrevocable. So we have a neighbor that has a roadway, actually the former landowner. That roadway must be maintained, but we are looking to make it a non-asphalt, permeable roadway to best complement the surrounding habitat restoration. We also have utilities going through. Southern California Edison and the city has a water line, and we're working with the city to make sure their water line stops breaking on a regular basis. And I think you've talked to the city of Seal Beach about that and issued them a permit. We're working in lockstep with them to make sure that that's a secure water line. And we're working with Edison to actually take their overhead transmission lines and put them underground, which is a step in the right direction. It's very challenging, but very, very promising. And the concept of this changing the great degradation of the land, which I walked you through, into something that has ecological value just by using hand tools and volunteers is a very challenging one. I wish that could be accomplished. The Los Rios Wetlands Authority owns 243 acres now of the 500 acres, which is tremendous. Starting in 2009, they started a program to restore 12 acres around this location called Zedler Marsh, named after the great Joy Zedler. And we're still working on it with volunteer labor. 12 acres. It takes a very long time. The amount of impacts to this land is sad and challenging. And so it is unfortunate that we must take the steps that are necessary to get it back to the value that we want it to be at. But I can assure you that this applicant is taking all the steps to protect all the resources that currently exist out there. Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right, I'll turn it to staff to see if there's any further comments on this item based on what we've heard from the public.
Thank you, Chair Cummings. First, I just wanted to take a moment to address the issue about the oil production facilities. There was a mention that this would facilitate oil production, suggesting, I think, that it was on site. There's no oil production on site. There is an adjacent parcel that is still owned by Hellman Properties, and they do carry out oil production there. That's been ongoing since the early 20s. I would note that ultimately, as part of the same CDP that required the 100 acres here to be made available for sale for wetlands restoration, that when oil production ceases on that site, that land too is intended to be made available for sale for wetlands restoration. So that's a good thing. You know, as far as the cultural resources, we are of course very concerned about that. You know, there have been resources discovered in the area, and we know there is a sort of a high level of risk of that. And there are conditions imposed to address that, which I'll ask my colleague to go over in just a moment. But you know, much of the grading that's occurring for this project to enable the tidal aspect is to occur within what is essentially fill. There was fill placed all over the site when the river was relocated and channelized. So the expectation is that they're mostly digging into that fill. Now, of course, there is a potential that there are resources in the fill that came from another location, but again, the monitoring would cover that. So with that, I'll turn it over to Danny Ziff to just go over the cultural resource issues and in particular response to Mr. Morales' comments. Danny?
Yeah, thank you, Carl. You covered a lot of it. You know, first of all, I want to acknowledge that as far as tribal cultural resource protection goes, this restoration project, you know, while it enhances tribal cultural resources, including ecological resources and access in the long term as compared to current conditions, does have significant impacts to existing tribal cultural resources. Adrian Morales spoke to this point, and our staff acknowledges that this site and the resources therein are tribal cultural resources as defined in the Public Resources Code. Adrian Morales was also representing Chief Morales, who has repetitively described the trauma associated with past and proposed development at this site. To minimize such impacts, the applicant has proposed to avoid impacts to multiple acres of the site. Additionally, staff recommends the commission impose special condition 4, which requires a monitoring and treatment plan be prepared in consultation with appropriate tribal governments for known and potential unknown tribal cultural resources. Thus, the tribes with ancestral ties to the area will determine the final appropriate monitoring and treatment methods for the duration of the project. This condition and others protecting in perpetuity the tribal access benefits of the project recognize the sovereignty of tribes and ensure their voices are meaningfully represented in the final project plans. Staff would note that other Gabrielino affiliated and Ahashiman tribal entities are in support of the project with these mitigation measures as outlined by the applicant and our staff.
Just like to conclude real fast. Thank you, Danny. Thank you, Carl, by just appreciating all the work that has gone into developing this restoration project. LCWA really took, as Eric said, all those comments in and tried to make the project better and make it and address as much as possible. It's not possible to get everybody on the same page all the time, but the process that they developed with which to pull get all those comments out into the open is really to be commended, and frankly a model for other projects. And just want to appreciate LCWA, their approach, as and all the partners that have been involved, Conservancy, Commission, everybody. It's been quite an impressive effort, and I think the product here that you're seeing today in the project that we recommend you approve today for under the Coastal Act is going to be a really unique and opportunity for this community to reconnect to this place that has been, underfill in industrial development for such a long time. So again, we continue to recommend you that you approve this project and are available for any questions. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. Okay, I got a couple commissioners on stack, but I want to see if there's any other commissioners who'd like to comment on this item. Over here. Yeah, no, I'm seeing if there's any other folks. Okay.
Chair.
So, yep, I'm going to start with you, Commissioner Aranga.
Well, thank you. One of the things about this project is that it's an ongoing, long-term project. I want to thank Mr. Zane for making the trip to Santa Cruz for his presentation. He gave an excellent overview of the history regarding the Cerritos Wetlands. I also like to thank my colleague, Councilmember Duggan, for her comments, and I want to align myself with those comments that she made. It is an opportunity to get more people involved, more people to engage, more people to enjoy the wetlands area in Long Beach, which is right there. It's referred to as Seal Beach, but it borders Long Beach, and it was it's something very important for us that we maintain it and grow it, because that's what eventually we want to do. Is we want to grow the land there. I mentioned earlier that while there might be some concerns regarding oil, once that is done, that land becomes wetlands. So it's an excellent plan. There is also an excellent opportunity for the tribes to get involved, to be engaged, to present their concerns, and we are listening. So with that, I'd like to make the motion at the appropriate time, but I hand it back to you, Chair.
Okay, thank you so much. Commissioner Turnbull Sanders.
Thank you, Chair Cummings, and thank you to Mr. Schwing for clarifying that there is no current oil operation on the site, and I am glad to hear that it's anticipated once the site adjacent completes oil extraction, it also will be dedicated for wetlands, as Commissioner Aranga mentioned in his comments as well. My questions are really to, and I don't know if it's possible to go back to the slide that staff presented with the supporters and opposition, if it's possible to pull that back up. Anyway, and I'll go on as we find that, but I think my concern is around the protection of tribal resources. I saw in the correspondence the opposition to the project by Chief Morales, and then also Adrian Morales's comments and those of Ms. Christensen and the Sierra Club about protecting cultural resources. And it's a challenge because I feel like when we say cultural resources, it really kind of divorces it from kind of what I think Mr. Morales mentioned, which is that these are potentially artifacts from villages and then also human remains. And so I think we have to really just approach this very carefully. It sounds like the Los Cerritos Wetlands Authority gathered a number of tribal representatives in an attempt to try and come to a feasible solution to the challenges that are faced. But my question goes to, and then also recognizing that 90% of our wetlands are lost already. And so I really am supportive of the idea of retaining wetlands and also creating more with this restoration project, and hopeful with the site, the adjacent site for the future. But my question goes to, and maybe it's a question more for the Los Cerritos Wetlands Authority. Is the band, the Gabrielino Tongva Band of San Gabriel Mission Indians, are they at the table in terms of the collaboration with the collective? And then I guess the question would be to Ms. Ziff as to whether or not that band in particular is represented by those who have a tribal claim to the area and part of the monitoring program.
Thank you for that question. Again, Eric Zahn, representative for the applicant. Happy to provide some perspective on your question about the Gabrielino Tongva San Gabriel Band of Mission Indians involvement. They have, as part of AB 52, been part of the consultations for the program EIR and the mitigated negative declaration, been invited to be part of those consultations. On top of that, they were provided with a letter of invitation to be participants in the tribal advisory group, along with many other entities that did not join the group. They participated in the first meeting of the tribal advisory group. And just as recently of January of this year, we reached out to them again through the urging of other tribal advisory group members to see if they wanted to participate further. They are also part of the rotation for the tribal monitors. So as part of some of the pre-planning efforts, we have had to do borings and actually received a coastal development permit a few years ago to do those borings and established a tribal monitor rotation. And they are part of that rotation and have been on site acting as tribal monitors in the past.
Thank you. And through the chair, I would just encourage the Los Cerritos Wetlands Authority to keep that as an open invitation and to continue, as the other tribal members recommended, to keep reaching out. I don't think we're going to come to a solution that is necessarily going to be satisfactory to everyone. This is a really tough, gut-wrenching decision. I think what staff mentioned about the expectations that because the area was covered by fill and that the restoration would likely or have less of a likelihood of impacting existing cultural resources at the site that weren't necessarily brought there by the fill, which I hope that's not the case. But I think I'm generally supportive of the project, but I'm doing so with some level of regret, because I think we, as we're moving through these projects, a lot of times we see cultural resources, and again, these are remains, these are precious, sacred items, and really recognizing that. And I think we treat sometimes, as we develop property, we treat those resources as kind of collateral damage. And I think some of the mitigation around our tribal consultation plan, around our tribal monitoring plan is designed to help mitigate that. But I do want to recognize that mitigation is not a full solution, and this is not a perfect solution, and it still is an unfortunate place to be in, because ideally we would be able to do this in a way that would satisfy all of those folks who are at the table. So I just wanted to make that comment, because I think I don't think we should take it lightly, what we're managing in terms of this category of cultural resources, in particular recognizing and attempting to meet communities and recognize sovereignty in a way that's respectful and actually has some meaning. So I will be supporting this project, but doing so somewhat reluctantly for the reasons that I mentioned.
Okay. Commissioner Nothoff, do you have any questions or comments? No? Any other commissioners have any questions or comments on this item? Okay, seeing none, I just want to thank everyone who's been involved in this effort for all of their hard work, and want to acknowledge my colleagues' comments on this item. And while it's not perfect and it's hard to make everyone happy, I will say that as a restoration ecologist, in terms of my professional background prior to getting into politics, that this is a great project in terms of the efforts that it's trying to go through to mitigate what has been an industrial use and a disturbance that did not take into account cultural resources, did not acknowledge the impact that it would have on previous tribal uses of this land, to now attempting to restore it to a habitat that has been lost. And one of the habitats that's greatly that's very rare throughout the globe. Globally, wetlands have been just developed over time. They've been drained and degraded, and so there's very few wetland habitats throughout the world. And the fact that we're going to be restoring 100 acres of wetland habitat, I think, is something that we should be proud of. And to my colleagues' comments, I do very much hope that we're trying to bring everyone to the table as best as we can, and trying to mitigate some of the impacts on cultural resources, and that we're, keeping the community updated on those efforts and keeping the tribes at the table, so that we are making sure that we're doing this in collaboration with the people who have historic ties to this land. But as we're seeing the impacts of climate change, it's really important that we're trying to restore habitat where we can that can serve as a buffer to some of these impacts of climate change. And so with that, I'll just conclude my comments. I want to thank you for being here, sir, and thank everyone for all their hard work on this. And I'll turn it back to Commissioner Uranga for the motion on this item.
Thank you, Chair. Appreciate your comments. And I appreciate the comments of my colleagues on the commission, those who spoke. As well, I want to thank everybody that came forward to speak on regarding this project. I move that the commission approve coastal development permit number 5-23-233 pursuant to the staff recommendation and recommend a yes vote.
Okay, so we have a motion by Commissioner Uranga, seconded by Commissioner Bochco. The maker of the motion is recommending a yes vote, and I'll turn it back to Ms. Miller for a roll call.
Commissioner Harmon.
Yes.
Harmon, yes. Commissioner Hart.
Yes.
Hart, yes. Commissioner Kelly.
Yes.
Kelly, yes. Commissioner Lowenberg.
Yes.
Lowenberg, yes. Commissioner Nodoff.
Aye.
Nodoff, yes. Commissioner Turnbull Sanders.
Yes.
Turnbull Sanders, yes. Commissioner Uranga.
Aye.
Uranga, yes. Commissioner Bochco.
Yes.
Bochco, yes. Commissioner Escalante.
Yes.
Escalante, yes. Chair Cummings.
Aye.
Cummings, yes. The vote is unanimous.
Thank you so much. Okay, I want to ask a little bit of a question in terms of process. So we have, I believe, 3 more items, and we have closed session. And so I'm just wondering if the commissioners want to continue moving forward. Lunch?
I might recommend we take lunch, and we can do closed session during lunch.
Oh, okay, then we can do that. So we'll adjourn for closed session. We'll grab lunch. We're going to do closed session in here?
That's correct.
Okay, so we'll ask the public to please vacate this room. Commissioners, I believe lunch is outside.
Correct.
So grab your lunch, bring it back in, and then we'll go into closed session.
Thanks.
All right, let's go ahead and continue with the rest of our meeting. We've only got a couple items left on our agenda today. And so we'll move into item number 17, San Diego Coast District Deputy Director's Report, and I'll turn it back over to Mr. Schwing.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So with the Deputy Director's Report, we're reporting 4 waivers and 1 CDP extension for projects in San Diego, Carlsbad, and Solana Beach. There's no known opposition, and we're asking whether 3 or more commissioners object to the waivers or the extension.
Okay, I'd like to ask if there's any members of the public who would like to speak on this item.
I know, we just have one from Carlsbad available for questions.
Okay, bring it back to the commission. Are there any questions or comments on this item? Seeing none, do 3 or more commissioners object to the staff recommendation? Seeing none, commission concurs. That will bring us to item number 18C, City of Del Mar LCP Amendment number LCP-6-DMR-23-0001-2, ADU update. This was moved to our regular consent calendar. It was pulled from our consent calendar. So I'll turn it to staff for a presentation on this item.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So Stephanie Leach with our San Diego Coast District Office is going to do the presentation on that item, and if we could pull up the staff PowerPoint.
Thank you, Carl. Good afternoon, Commissioners. Item TH18C is an amendment to the Certified Implementation Plan of the City of Del Mar to increase opportunities for the construction of ADUs in areas largely already developed with commercial and residential uses. Next slide, please. The city is proposing to amend its Certified Implementation Program to update permit processing procedures and development regulations for the construction of ADUs and junior ADUs on single-family and multifamily lots. An incentive bonus and amnesty program are also included to further encourage housing opportunities. The current slide depicts the city's zoning map and highlights in red those expanded zones where ADU development will be allowable per the subject amendment. The zones that are crossed out in black are those where ADU development is still prohibited. These zones prioritize visitor-serving uses, the Del Mar Fairgrounds, the railroad right-of-way, the floodway, and public parkland. Expanding opportunities for ADU and junior ADU construction will not displace any existing high-priority Coastal Act uses, such as public recreation or visitor-serving uses. No direct impacts to public access, habitat, or visual resources are expected, as the city is already largely developed and additional structures will likely be considered infill. Del Mar is a small city located entirely in the coastal zone and has a number of popular beach areas and a trail system along the San Dieguito Lagoon. Limited off-street public parking is available in the northern end of the city, but it's heavily utilized by the public for beach access. Next slide, please. There are a number of suggested modifications to the city's amendment. Many of them are revisions to clarify the city's intent and Coastal Act requirements or correct government code and LCP references. Others ensure that ADUs do not result in new or increased impacts to coastal resources, such as environmentally sensitive habitat areas, wetlands, public access, and public views, or site ADUs in areas vulnerable to geological and flooding hazards. Still others clarify when an ADU or junior ADU may be considered exempt from an administrative CDP, as well as restricts the development of tiny homes in the beach commercial and visitor commercial zones in order to preserve priority visitor serving uses. Next slide, please. After publication of the staff report, a letter was received from a member of the public, Chris Peterson. Mr. Peterson asserts that the amendment as proposed and as modified inappropriately limits the scope of exemptions available for ADUs. Staff agrees that more exemptions for ADUs should be permitted, and thus suggested modification number 4 has been revised to state ADUs and junior ADUs are exempt from an administrative coastal development permit when directly attached to an existing single-family residence if the ADU otherwise qualifies as exempt development pursuant to section 13250 of the Commission's regulations. Next slide, please. Also, in response to Mr. Peterson's letter, staff has made a revision to eliminate the city's proposed requirement that replacement parking be provided where an existing garage, carport, or covered parking is demolished or converted to a junior ADU in order to comply with state ADU law. Next slide, please. There are 2 different issues to be discussed in regards to where the city has required parking in conjunction with the development of ADUs. The first addresses replacement parking. The city is proposing that where an existing garage, carport, or covered parking is demolished or converted to an ADU, replacement off-street parking shall be required. This provision would allow for an increase in housing, but maintain the parking required for the existing structure and therefore maintain the majority of existing street public parking for beach access. An important note here is that this requirement for replacement parking does not apply to junior ADUs. Staff has modified the city's proposal so that it doesn't apply to junior ADUs, and the city has accepted this modification. The second issue concerns parking for an ADU itself. And to be clear here, junior ADUs are not covered by this provision. The city is proposing that 1 parking space be provided for ADUs that are not located within 1/2 mile walking distance of public transit or within the Coastal Commission appeals jurisdiction. The appeals jurisdiction in the city of Del Mar is between the sea and the first public road and within 300 feet of the beach, and the parking requirement would only apply in this area in order to preserve the parking for beach access. Staff is recommending minor changes to clarify that these requirements apply where necessary to protect public access. We believe these minor changes address Mr. Peterson's concerns as well as maintain the overall intent of the city's original language that protects public access. We'd also like to note that the city has indicated they accept these changes. I will now hand it over to Senior Attorney Robin Mayer to read the proposed language to be incorporated into the amendment as depicted on this slide and the next slide.
Thank you, Stephanie. Good afternoon, Commissioners. Staff recommends 3 further edits to suggested modifications 14 and 15. We understand the city will accept these further changes as followed. In the overarching clause in suggested modification number 14, after the words be maintained and replaced on site, add only if the loss of off-street parking supply has a significant effect on public access to the shoreline. And adding item 4, no off-street parking requirements apply to any ADUs proposed within 1/2 mile of a major transit stop, regardless of whether the ADU would be located within the Commission's appellate jurisdiction. Next slide, please. And in suggested modification number 15, adding in the item D, after the words Coastal Commission appeals jurisdiction, where the on-street parking supply has a significant effect on public access to the shoreline. This completes staff's further suggested edits to the modifications. Back to Stephanie for the recommendation.
Thank you, Robin. Next slide, please. So staff does recommend denial of the amendment as submitted and approval as modified in the staff report, including the addendum and as read into the record today. This concludes staff's presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Are there any members of the public signed up to speak on this item?
Yes, we had Christopher Peterson still on the line, and then we also had the city of Del Mar, I think Amanda Lee on Zoom as well, available for questions.
Okay. Are there any ex partes on this item? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the commission because I believe that Mr. Peterson already spoke. And so Commissioner Hart.
No, he's
Oh.
he's entitled to speak again.
Oh, he's entitled to speak again. Okay, great. Well, then we'll open up to public comment.
Okay, Christopher Peterson, I see that you're in. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, commissioners. My name is Christopher Peterson. I would like to thank staff for its responsiveness to its comments, and these latest changes do address the concerns that I'd raised. So thank you very much for that, and I urge the commission to approve the suggested modifications with the revisions that staff has proposed. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I'm sorry, Chair, we understand the city actually does want to give a presentation.
Oh, okay. All right, well then we'll open it up to the city to provide a presentation on this item as well. And I'd like to ask the city of Del Mar, how much time would you all need?
I'll try to get through it very quickly. Thank you so much for your time. I'm Amanda Lee, City of Del Mar Principal Planner, and I first want to thank Commission staff for their hard work. It's been a multi-year coordination on our ADU ordinance update and harmonization with the Coastal Act. A lot of work put into this. And based on what was said earlier, it understands that we're in agreement right now, but we are a very small coastal city with a shoreline that runs the length of our city. We're less than 2 square miles, with about a third of it that's occupied by the state fairgrounds, which is a popular regional serving entertainment destination. We as a city already host 3 million visitors on our beaches each year, and parking on our shoreline is a challenge year round, particularly neighborhoods along the San Diego Lagoon and South Bluff, which are public scenic coastal view areas with popular public trails, surfing. And then we have our North Beach neighborhood, which has a sandy beach and beach level access for the public at each street end. So this is a very parking impacted, high visitor demand area. The connection to ADUs is that these are the neighborhoods where we have many ADUs. And since this is a housing ordinance, it's important to understand the bulk of new development in our city is ADUs. We have about 2,600 dwelling units in total, and at least 109 of those are new ADUs. We have much higher ADU production than the statewide average that's been reported by HCD. So we have about 98% of our housing production is ADUs compared to the statewide average of 20%. If the replacement parking is not required, it would mean that the 100+ spaces would be lost to new residential use that could significantly impact and reduce public access to the coast. That's why this has been so important for us. We really appreciate the commission staff working on those revisions. We are in full support of the staff recommendation as amended. It does ensure consistency with the coastal resource and access protections and the spirit of our certified LCP and what our council adopted. So we really appreciate and thank you for your consideration. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, with that, I'll bring it back to the board. Commissioner Hart.
Thanks so much, Chair. I want to express my appreciation for the work that was done to, I think, come up with a great resolution, and I really appreciate the city's position on this. But I feel that this also addresses the concerns that the city expressed, and so I was prepared to make a motion on this item. Although perhaps Commissioner Kelly might have additional.
Yeah, go ahead, Commissioner Kelly.
I just had one follow-up question. In the language regarding whether the parking is not required if you're within a certain distance of a major transit stop, is there a reason why we're using the language of major as opposed to a transit stop? And what's the definition of major?
Yes, I can answer that. Major transit stop is defined in Bill AB 2097 that prohibits parking requirements for ADUs within half mile of a major public transit stop. So that definition is intended to refer back to that that provision. So it is a defined term, just not in the LCP.
Through the chair, I just wanted to, with curiosity, I think the bus lines that run through Del Mar, I don't know if they have 30-minute headways, so I don't believe they rise to the level of a major transit stop for purposes of that assembly bill. So does that mean that basically there are no major transit stops in Del Mar, and so therefore that language is only going to come into effect should the headways change and the buses start running more frequently or new transit gets developed. Yes, nodding head, yes,
Yes,
okay,
that's correct.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions or comments from the commission? Seeing none, I'll turn it back to Commissioner Hart for the motion on this item.
Thanks, Chair. All right, initially I move that the commission reject the implementation program amendment for the city of Del Mar as submitted and asking for a yes vote.
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Hart, seconded by Commissioner Bochco, asking for a yes vote on this item. I'll turn it to Ms. Miller for a roll call vote.
Commissioner Hart.
That would be yes.
Hart, yes. Commissioner Kelly.
Yes.
Kelly, yes. Commissioner Lowenberg.
Yes.
Lowenberg, yes. Commissioner Nuttall.
Aye.
Nuttall, yes. Commissioner Turnbull Sanders.
Yes.
Turnbull Sanders, yes. Commissioner Uranga.
Aye.
Uranga, yes. Commissioner Bochco.
Yes.
Bochco, yes. Commissioner Escalante.
Yes.
Escalante, yes. Commissioner Harmon. Chair Cummings.
Aye.
Cummings, yes. The vote is unanimous.
All right, thank you very much. Before we move on to our last item.
It's another motion.
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead, sorry.
Excuse me. I move that the commission certify the implementation program amendment for the city of Del Mar if it is modified pursuant to the staff recommendation, which also incorporates the language that was just discussed. Can you confirm that, council? That
Yes,
would be
it does. That
included by
is
the
part of the
motion?
staff recommendation. Yes.
All right, thank you, and I'm asking for a yes vote.
Okay, so we have a motion by Commissioner Hart, seconded by Commissioner Bochco. Seeing no further comments on this item, I'll turn it back to Ms. Miller for a roll call vote.
Commissioner Kelly.
Yes.
Kelly, yes. Commissioner Lowenberg.
Yes.
Lowenberg, yes. Commissioner Nuttall.
Aye.
Nuttall, yes. Commissioner Turnbull Sanders.
Yes.
Turnbull Sanders, yes. Commissioner Uranga.
Aye.
Uranga, yes. Commissioner Bochco.
Yes.
Bochco, yes. Commissioner Escalante.
Yes.
Escalante, yes. Commissioner Hart.
Yes.
Hart, yes. Chair Cummings.
Aye.
Cummings, yes. The vote is unanimous.
All right. Thank you very much. I think that closes out that item. And so with that, I'll turn it back to our legal counsel to report out of closed session.
Thank you, Chair Cummings. The commission met in closed session over the lunch break. It received litigation information and advice on Space Exploration Corporation, Inc. versus Coastal Commission, Mendocino Railway versus Ainsworth, Friends of Oceano Dunes versus Coastal Commission. That's case number 21 CV0214. Also, Friends of Oceano Dunes versus California Department of Parks and Recreation et al. And Casimir Homeowners Association versus California Coastal Commission. The commission also received litigation information and advice and took action on O'Neill versus California Coastal Commission and City of Fort Bragg versus Mendocino Railway. That concludes my report.
All right, thank you very much. Which brings us to our last item, item number 19A, appeal number A-6-CII-25-0001, Massman, Carlsbad, and I'll turn it to staff for a presentation on this item.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So item 19A is an appeal by the commission of a permit approved by the city of Carlsbad to construct two new tied-back shotcrete seawalls along the southern and northern sides of a public access stairway, infill of sea caves with erodible concrete, new drainage pipe, and some other repairs to the stairway itself, and the use of mechanized equipment on the beach during construction. And while some of the proposed project elements are beneficial to maintaining this public access way, the city's decision to issue a coastal permit raises a number of LCP consistency issues, including first, that there are unresolved issues surrounding jurisdiction. The project appears to be bisected by the city of Carlsbad and Coastal Commission permit jurisdiction, since portions of the proposed project will be seaward of the mean high tide line, assuming full scour scenario, and construction of the project would require the use of mechanized equipment on the beach. The city submitted a letter in response to the staff report disputing this determination. And while the commission's mapping unit does not believe the site is bisected based on their initial review, the city's continued dispute of this determination supports a finding of substantial issue and further review on de novo. With regard to the shoreline protection, the city approved the new protection with findings that it was needed to protect the beach from an eroding bluff and for public safety. The appellants contend that the city's approval of new shoreline protection does not appear to fall within the scenarios that where a shoreline protective device could be permitted under the city's LCP, which mirrors Coastal Act Policy 30253. In addition, alternative solutions to shoreline armoring. And in response to the staff report, the city provided correspondence that they believe the armoring is consistent with the LCP and a brief discussion of alternatives, but the alternatives considered did not include repairs or stabilization measures on the staircase itself or redesigning the staircase without constructing new shoreline protection or other lesser measures. So staff believes there's still insufficient evidence that the approved project is the least environmentally damaging alternative, which supports a finding of substantial issue and further review on de novo. Further, it does not appear adequate mitigation to address the impacts that a shoreline protective device would have on local shoreline sand supply and public access. And then the third concern relates to unpermitted development. The new seawalls would tie into and be dependent on an unpermitted seawall that's located immediately up coast of the staircase. And the infill would occur in sea caves that have been formed around the unpermitted seawall due to flanking. So unless there are 3 or more commissioners who wish to hold a hearing on the question of substantial issue would be found, and we'll bring this back on de novo review at a later date. If the commission does wish to have a hearing, we do have a more fulsome presentation to provide at that point. And that concludes my comments.
All right. So with that, do 3 or more commissioners wish to have a public hearing on this item at this point in time? Seeing none, substantial issues found on this item. And with that, we will conclude our Thursday meeting. Tomorrow we'll be starting back up again at 9 a.m. And so wish you all a happy and healthy day.